Hello, humans. Welcome to the M Word podcast brought to you by Martin. That's me.
And Matt.
That's him over there. And we're joined by Ian over there. Thanks for joining us, Ian.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me again.
Pleasure. Absolutely a million things to dig into. But the first thing I'm just going to ask more for our listeners is people to share the podcast, share the Facebook posts. It's really appreciated. More of that could be done, the better. We're just trying to raise the community. People like Ian are coming for the second time, probably another couple of hours of his time that he's sharing his knowledge. We spoke to so many athletes, people with really interesting stories that are just giving their time up for nothing. We do it for the love of chatting to people as well and spreading information. So, if you can, any share posts, invite friends through Facebook, all of that's massively appreciated by Matt and myself. So again, I think about old episodes. We did one with Connor Cummins. We're all aware of his big crash on the mountain. We did a podcast with him and a gentleman called Richard Slee. Richard had a fight, or his leg did, with a tram. He lost, and they obviously both had massive traumas that they had to go through. So they talk about their resilience coming back from that, and the rehab and their different stories. One, Connor's very public, and then Richard was very unpublic. And their journey. We talked to a guy who was a heroin addict when he was younger, became a gang enforcer, and then turned his life around. Really interesting, long story. We talked to Ben Swift, who's rides for the biggest cycling team in the world. I think the Christian Varley story, certainly a lot of locals know about Christian and his story. And right back one of our early episodes, George Blackwell, a guy that, again, had mental health issues as a young lad at uni, and sort of through resilience got through that now, and lost his rugby career really out of it. But yeah, really interesting story, really good guy to listen to. So again, go and look at our old episodes because there's good stuff in there. And one of those old episodes includes Ian. So we spoke July 2020. Is
that when it was?
Yeah, 2 years ago. Bits happened since then.
Just a little bit.
But before we dig into that, for your side of the story, let's set the scene. For those who want to go back, it's in our feed, July 2020. It's a couple of hours. We chat about many things, which we'll just quickly cover and then dig into one or two. So we talk about, you're very candid about mental health, depression earlier in your life, how you tackle that, how you then sort of built through sort of teaching yourself. And again, I'm very paraphrasing it, but teaching yourself to look after yourself in a health, food, what went inside you, what went inside your head as well.
Yeah.
Changing your diet. Learn about Dr. Sebi, which is a subject I really like, and people should go away and research about Dr. Sebi.
Yeah.
And then I suppose one of the things that not defines you now, but we're known for Wim Hof. So I want to dig in a little bit, or just maybe an overview of, for those that haven't come across Wim Hof, and your story particularly around that. Perhaps dig into that for 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, of course. So basically, like I said before, I got sick. I had a bowel condition that the doctors told me I'd be on medication for the rest of my life. That kind of didn't sit right with me because of I've seen a close family member be on antidepressants my whole life and seen how it's not really worked for them and not helped them. So I decided, getting to the point of where I wanted to take my own life, I decided, why not try and die, trying to be healthier and get to the bottom of what I was dealing with. So that put me on a road of then, like I said, I finally healed myself after 2 years. I found Dr. Sebi. I wanted to go to his healing village in Honduras, which I eventually did. But on that journey, a lot of people that I loved and cared about, and friends, fathers and things like that, got sick with things like cancer. And so for me, after seeing that Dr. Sebi, one of his claims was that he cured all disease from cancer, AIDS, diabetes, sickle cell, blindness, lupus, paralysis, all that type of stuff. So, and for me, I was open-minded enough to say, well, you know what, why don't I just, instead of believing in a theory, which is what Dr. Sebi would say, which would be, I either know something or I don't know something. I don't want to believe in theory or philosophy. I either know it or I don't know it. So for me, I wanted to challenge myself and say, well, okay, I want to go to Honduras. But then it was my friend's father who then put me onto the Wim Hof method after he got sick. And another friend of mine got sick, who they both tragically ended up losing their life. But it was that their strength dealing with the cancer that put me on the path to the Wim Hof method. So it was all that negative stuff that I had going in my life. You can listen to on the last podcast of how my journey, how I got there. But, to cut it short, I ended up going to Poland, ended up meeting Wim. And it was actually Wim who took my phone number and email address and said, I think you should pass this message on, really. And I didn't think I was good enough to teach the Wim Hof method. I had no confidence, and I was like, but I believe everything happens for a reason. I believe I was in Poland for a reason. I broke my fear of the cold because I hated the cold, and I was all about conquering my fears and getting myself out of my own comfort zone. And I went there to Poland in search of seeing if this method could be one of the things added in with Dr. Sebi's teachings that could help these people that were suffering. But when I got there, I soon realised it was actually me that needed the healing. And since then, Wim, not only just Wim and his method has completely changed my life and made me more confident and made me believe in myself, made me believe that I can do a lot more than we're being told, and our bodies are capable of a lot more as well. So
at the moment, if you're listening on podcast format, there will be a YouTube version of this, and on the visuals, apart from seeing our beautiful faces, there's a video playing about Wim Hof, which you can watch in the background. I appreciate you can also find it. Just for our listeners, give us a high level of what the Wim Hof method is.
So the Wim Hof method is based on 3 pillars. So you've got your breath work, your cold exposure, and your mindset and commitment. So the breath work changes the chemistry of the body on a physiological level, and makes the blood stream more alkaline state. Now, one thing that I found the correlation between the Wim Hof method and Dr. Sebi was that the alkalinity, that side of things, that if you have an alkaline state in the body, then it's less easy for disease and bacteria and stuff like that to grow and develop in. So that's one of the benefits of the breathing technique. It also trains the vascular system on a level that's never been trained before, because you're pushing the CO2 threshold and the oxygen threshold. You're also suppressing pro-inflammatory proteins in the body, interleukin 6 and interleukin 8. You're suppressing them and enhancing interleukin 10, which is an anti-inflammatory. So there's so many benefits to the breathing technique, and it can also make you potentially, it's like a deep meditative state, but you can go to other kind of realms within yourself as well. Some people have out-of-body experiences and things like that, and it can be quite spiritual on levels as well, dealing with trauma. We call it issues in the tissues, and in that world, where all these traumas that we're dealing with, whether it be something from yesterday or something from childbirth, some of this stuff, we're holding on to it in our cells and our tissues.
Why don't we hear about that more then? If it's such a benefit from 2 people. I don't want to say the obvious answer about corporations or anything like that, but
I mean, the simple question would be, for me, would be monetary, maybe, because simple things like breathing techniques and going to the cold. You can jump in a cold shower. You can do these breathing techniques at home. A plant-based diet you can go on and change to straight away, but it takes more responsibility from us. I think we spoke about that last time on the podcast. Taking responsibility for your own self and your own health, which I don't think a lot of people do most of the time. But for the question is, it's not very financially viable for big pharma. You make lots of money off people being sick to promote these alternate therapies and things like that, which are now
whose job is it to promote it?
To me, pardon?
Whose job it is to promote it, do you think?
I'm not too sure. It's a good question.
Schools, government.
Yeah. Well, if it was me, I mean, I know that the media and a lot of people get a lot of funding from big pharma and governments and things like that. That's very, very true and very easy to find that. So if they're trying to sell a product and they're funding governments and media and everyone else, are they really going to speak out against that when they make massive amounts of money off people being sick? And if you're a customer for life, and I know people who are on pharmaceuticals that now can't get off them, people in my family that can't get off them because now they've been taking them for that long, they can't get off them, they're addictive. So it's like, if you're now a customer of life, if you're selling a product, it's not a very good marketing tool, is it? Right, we've got this product, it's going to make you sick, you're never going to have to take anything again. Great, but you just lost the customer.
Yeah.
So for me, changing your diet, which takes a lot more hard work than just taking a tablet.
You'd think the government, would have a driver, because ultimately they fund the NHS example, and they want to cut that cost, and one way to do that is to stop people appearing in hospital.
Yeah. Well, you'd think so. Yeah. I mean, You would think so, but you know, for me, it's like and the government, I feel, should be helping me and subsidising me, helping me and paying me to help people and help them, you know, and help their members of staff. Yeah, so you know, I'm working on that at the minute and trying to get in with the health, mental health departments and things like that, because that means a lot to me, people's mental health. And
recently there was a documentary on Wim Hof on BBC or the iPlayer.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah,
You've obviously know the guy as well. Is that a fair representation of what it's about? I haven't seen it, so I couldn't really comment.
Okay, well, so for the next one, so we talked about the breath work, and then so we talk about the cold as well. So the cold, for me, the way it started off with the TV show where people are jumping straight into the ice, I mean, for that it'd be I think that's a bit too much going forward. But Wim is a master again. People out of the comfort zone. He completely changed my life by getting me out of my comfort zone. He kind of knows. I don't know whether he sees it in people, but he knows how far to push certain people. It's just an intuition thing that maybe he's got, and he's extra sensory or whatever it is. But
when you're saying pushing out your comfort zone,
yeah.
In what way? Because obviously, when I think of Wim Hof, I think of the cold or the breathing. How else is he pushing you further than you think?
So for me, going off the show, it was like he had them jumping in freezing cold water straight away, right? And that's a great question. So he had them going to cold water straight away, head under the whole lot, and I would more be easing them into the cold because it can be quite a shocking experience. For me personally, what Wim did with me, like, I hate the cold, but I didn't fear it. I was, for me, I was going there with my mindset, if I climb this mountain, which I did now twice, and just in my shorts at minus 30, 40, whatever it was, that for me, I found peace there. But the most challenging thing for me at the time was having the confidence to play my guitar in front of people. It was like, and then, when we had that conversation after, I think we spoke about it last time, where he's singing his Crazy Monkey song, and I'm saying, oh, Wim, I just want to hear what you're saying in your song. And at the end of it, he's had to sing it in my ear. And I resonated completely with what he was saying in that song, from all the stuff that I've been looking up. And it was like, wow, I finally found someone who's on my level of understanding to a degree. And he said at the end of it, that music's like meditation, man, it connects with the soul. And I said, right, well, that's why I like to play in my dark times, that I see my guitar as like my counsellor. Whatever I want to say in my kitchen when I'm playing it on my own to my best mate or whoever, I can just let it off my chest and it's gone then. I'm no longer holding on to it. So, and talking in front of people and playing the guitar in front of people. So that night when he looked at me and he said, you play? Yeah. And give me the guitar. I was like, play, man. And I there's me, no confidence. I know I can't play. He's like, just play the guitar, and gives it me, and he's looking at me with those steely blue eyes of his, and I'm like, okay. So I start playing it. I played my own song, and he really enjoyed it. So it was like, okay. And next thing you know, because I got my head down, and like I said, I had no confidence, head down, eyes closed a little bit, playing the guitar, and I look up, and then there's a group of people sat around, and everyone's like cheering, and all the rest of it. I'm like, wow, this is well far out of my comfort zone. But I had a few drinks that night at that point. But then going back, so that was in 2017 when I first found the Wim Hof method, and then obviously I left on my journey to go to Honduras, and then to find to the Netherlands in Strood, to Spain, and then back to Poland. And one of the things I had to do when I got back to Poland was talk about what had gone on in my life and my journey, and I was a very closed off person. I would not talk about anything that had gone on in my life, anything training wise, anything, as open as I am now. I was very closed off. So when I got back to Poland, I'd actually been having sleepless nights for a year, thinking, how am I going to tell my story? I've got 10 minutes to get all this crap that I've been going through into this one little story and tell it. So in the end, in Poland, it's like, I just had to get it done this one night, because I'd had sleepless nights the night before. Poland, how I'm going to say this in front of all these strangers and whatnot. And it's this fear, again, of judgment from others. So I was like, okay, so I stopped and I did it. And in the end, I went through the whole thing. And it's like one person I was like halfway through, and one guy's like, 1 minute left, and it kind of threw me off. And I had tears in my eyes. It was the first time I've like cried in front of a group of people and let those emotions out. And I said, listen, I shouldn't even be here, because at the time I still didn't think I was good enough. I was like, you guys are all doctors or business owners, or you this, that, and the other. And I'm just a common guy from grew up around council estates and things like that. And it's like, I shouldn't even be here. So the only reason I'm here is because I played a guitar with Wim and a song with Wim, and he seemed to enjoy it and took my email address and phone number and said he'd be in contact with me. And I said, that's the only reason why I'm here. And then Wim, at the end of it, while I've got this lump in my throat and tears in my eyes, he's like, and it's a great song, you should play it again. And I'm like, this is the last thing I want. So getting me out of my comfort zone, and that really pushed me out of my comfort zone, because not only now am I emotional, I'm sat there, I'm struggling to sing, you know what I mean? I've got a lump in my throat, and Wim's and he's sat there recording it on his phone. I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going to do again. And that was then, like, that's the last one we're having for today type of thing. And it was the last one of the day, so.
Can I ask you a question? And apologies we asked the first time,
No,
but
okay.
I can't remember if I did. That lack of confidence that you had, what was that from? Why were you like that?
I think it probably stemmed from what I know now, is from childhood. I mean, my mum's a midwife, and she's, you know, she works in a high stressful job. I'm a twin, you know, and my sister suffers with certain mental health. I think we talked about in the last podcast. And then my dad, you know, I probably get my resilience from him. You know, he's a grafter. He works. You know, he used to get up. I used to see my dad get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, go out to work, go and work, drive 4 hours to work, do 8 hours graft on a building site or wherever, you know, building garages or doing whatever he was doing, and then come back home after another 4 hours home, and then try and be there for his kids while my mum's working the earlies, the lates, the nights, the on-calls, you know, all these long shifts, training to be a midwife and a nurse, and going through all that. And then at the same time, she's got to raise a family and two twins basically on their own, financially struggling because of, you know, you don't get much on a nurse's salary when you're learning things like that, and you're going through university and trying to do all your education at the same time. I remember my mum sitting on the floor with piles of books out and trying to exercise at the same time while we're all running around, you know. Well, my dad's off, he's trying to work and just provide and put food on the table for everyone. So for me, I probably stems from having that lack of confidence with not wanting to be a burden. Because my mum and dad had to deal with my sister.
You shy at school?
I'd learned difficulties. Yeah, I would say I was quite shy at school. I was quite shy when I left school. I was probably quite shy, really, up until I started doing the Wim Hof method. I was very, like I said, closed off. And my mum and dad, it's no secret, they used to argue quite a lot when I was younger. I hope they don't mind me saying that, but that's what it is. And I know now that was from the stress of what they were under. You know, I don't blame them for any of it and what they had to go through. They still put food on the table for me. And like I said, all that resilience and that. Like my dad, he's still now going out at his age, 60 odd years old, plastering people's ceilings. He's got a titanium knee to go with his titanium hip, and he's still out there painting people's houses, putting ceilings up for them, plastering the wall. He's still doing whatever he can do, you know what I mean? So,
do you wish you'd realised you were shy earlier?
I'd say no, you know, and you know why? Because I think everything happens for a reason in its process. So me having to go through all that has only now made me realise and made me stronger, because it's like I had to go through all that. And I believe that everything in life, like I said, now from my perspective, happens for a reason, and that I don't see things as like being things being bad. Like even the stuff that's happened to me over the last year, it's like I see it as like, okay, what is the universe now putting in my path for me to learn, rather than playing like victim consciousness. I don't like to blame others for my state of being and my reality in my world that's going on and that. So no, I'm grateful for it now. Like I'm grateful for like my mum and dad's arguing and shouting, because it's like I'm not intimidated by arguing and shouting. I'm not intimidated by bits of violence. I'm not intimidated by now all kinds of other things. So that was always there in me. But
it's part of life learning.
Yeah, it's part of life learning. I'm grateful for it now. I'm grateful for all the bad stuff that happened that's put me where it's put me, because without it, I wouldn't be where I am right now. So
the hill climbing in Poland,
yeah.
You mentioned shorts,
yeah,
which I think nicely brings us on to one of the things we want to dig into a bit more, a lot more. Was if we reel back to I'm going to say March 21, and you were arrested.
Yeah.
Let's walk through that story and talk about you ended up in court and etc. But let's set the scene. It began in Laxey. There was headlines in the press locally and internationally.
Yeah.
International. Okay. Yeah. Certainly the headline at that time was, I think, if I'm correct in saying, you were creating a gathering, which we'll get into the nitty gritty, but maybe set the scene on what happened on that around that day and how it played out from your perspective,
So
your side of the story.
Yeah, of course. I mean, so that's the only side of the story I can tell, and I was there. I've got first-hand knowledge of all of it. So from my side of the story, it's like mental health and people's mental health means a lot to me. So people know what I do, as you said before. They know I'm setting up a health and wellness company, and I teach the Wim Hof method as one big puzzle in that wellness, from what I've found and discovered. And so when I'm going down the local supermarkets, already we've been in 2 lockdowns and everything else, and people were struggling. I was going down, like, for instance, the local supermarket, and a woman was like, "Oh, I like your jumper, what's that?" And I was telling her, and then the checkout lady behind her was like, "Oh, I know who you are. Keep doing what you're doing. We need people like you in our society. My son's best friend took his own life last week." So I'm hearing all these stories of people who are taking their own lives, and I knew that the rate of people taking their own lives had nearly gone up by 400%. And that breaks my heart. It really does. After seeing, because I've seen a lot of similar stuff, and I've been through similar stuff myself. So to be able to know the answer that could help them very quickly and not be able to do anything, it was stuck between a rock and a hard place. So for me, I was like, I just was carrying on doing what I'm doing, and everyone knows I swim in Laxey Beach most mornings for sunrise. I think we talked about sun gazing a bit when we was on the last podcast. And so yeah, and there's something magical about that time in the morning, when you're in the freezing cold sea, which is a harsh environment. You're not getting up there just for the fun of it, at that time. And then you see that fireball come over the horizon, and you're staring at it, and it's like there's something magical about it, and it's unbelievable. So me going down to Laxey Beach wasn't out of the ordinary, but what was out of the ordinary was because it was a lockdown, and then people decided that they were going to join me on that beach.
Did you at any stage promote people to come down?
I can see how it could look like that. I might have promoted people to come down, but for me, I was just trying to promote health, and I was trying to promote positivity in a dark world at the time, because there was so much anger and aggression and hatred towards so many different people. It was just like from all angles, and like I think we touched on a little bit about the labels and stuff like that. Everyone's getting labelled an anti-vaxxer, conspiracy for COVID denier, or from the other side, it's like zombies, sheeple, Karens, or whatever. And I think all these terms are derogatory. I don't agree with any of it. I just think people should be just people and be themselves. So I hate the division and things like that. So for me, it's like, I can see where it might have seemed like it was promoting, but I was just trying to promote positivity and show people what was helping me stay healthy, physically, mentally, emotionally, especially when more people have died in our community from mental health and taking their own lives than they had of the actual disease that they're locking people down for. So for me, it's like, okay, well, what's more of the pandemic at this stage is people's mental health. So I was just trying to promote positivity. Then people started showing up to the beach where I go. So it's like, okay, so before
you never
I knew
invited
it,
anyone.
No. And so before I knew it, it was like people were turning up, and it's like, okay, well, even though they're at distance, they're getting to watch me and observe me, what I do, and they're getting to help themselves. So I was grateful,
I guess the difference was that was already your routine. It's not like you've said and organised, this is what I'm going to do now from now on.
Yeah.
You were just doing what you'd always be doing.
For 2 years.
People realise.
Yeah, it's well documented, that I go on Laxby talked about it, and that's where I go most mornings. I've kind of stopped that at the minute since everything happened and whatnot. But so, and I didn't know this at the time, but the law had actually changed the night before this gathering took place. So, and I didn't know it because I'm a simple man. I live in a motorhome. I was living in a motorhome at the time. I don't listen to any media briefings. I don't have a TV. I don't listen to the radio. I don't allow any of that fear and negativity into my world. I think we touched on it last time on the last podcast, and it's when I noticed, when I was looking into the mindset and neuro-linguistic programming and hypnotism and how the mind works and stuff like that, and I started seeing how politicians and people like that on the TV were using these hypnotic language patterns. I was thinking, well, this isn't right. If they're telling the truth, why do they need to use these language patterns? So for me, since then, I don't listen to any of that stuff. I don't allow that into my world. But I knew, keep your distance, and don't go near everyone, and keep people and keep state safe. So for me, it's like when these people decided they were going to turn up, and it was totally a surprise for me. Just like most people, like I didn't expect that many people to turn up down the beach, and I was just like, wow, please make sure you keep your distance.
I say, when they turned up, were they looking at you as if, I don't understand how to say it, that you were organising it and they were looking for you on what to do? It was, you were just turning up and doing what you did, and there just happened to be people, or did it, I don't know how to say it, but at any point did it feel that you were the leader in that sort of sense? Because I know it's something you're doing, but
I can see how it could have looked that way, but from my perspective, it's like, I'm just going down to what I normally do. If you want to turn up and see me doing what I'm doing, you want to copy what I'm doing, that's fine. And, as a safety aspect, people might feel safer knowing that there's an expert in the water nearby, because the cold sea is a harsh environment and anything can happen, so it has to be respected. Like Wim would say, respect it. It really needs. You need to respect the cold.
So if we go to the day of your arrest, the days before that, were you warned not to come down?
No, so basically, that day when that many people turned up, so I'll tell you exactly what happened from my perspective. People went into the sea. There was some people in the sea before I even got there, and there usually is some mornings. There's cold water swimmers, so there's people on the beach. There's like some days I'm down there on my own. Some days there's a few people down there. Some days it's just me and the dog walkers. So that day, so many people turned up, and it was a shock to me. Went into the sea, got out, and I normally do a head dunk before I get out, and a few people did that and was shouting and whatnot, which is why there was a bit of a complaint from one of the ladies on the beach, which I apologised for in my video. But then as we got out, it was really, like, for me, it was one of the most charged, insanely energetic mornings that I've ever felt. It was just mad. The whole feeling of it was insane. I can't even put it into words. But then when we got out, I then went to my van. Didn't go near anyone at all times. Went to my van, went to get changed, because you don't want to hang around and gather, as they call it, while you're cold. So I went to get into my van, and as I'm getting changed, I'm getting dry. And the next thing, the police officer is at the car that's just next to me.
You were aware they were there before that?
So I'd seen like a van pull up, and he just pulled up in the middle of the road, like just jumped out of his van. And I only found out later on that he'd actually said what he was saying to this girl to other members of the public, just from speaking to the witnesses. So he jumped out of his van, speaks to this young girl who's in a car on her own. She's vulnerable. She's down there because you don't get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to jump in a freezing cold sea unless you're not wanting to help yourself in some kind of way. There was a woman there with her children, for God's sake. It was like, that's the kind of environment. There was a woman there, and everyone was in their own little bubbles. Anyone who was close to each other was their family. Like this one lady was taking 2 young children to see, because they were suffering with their mental health, and their friends at school were. So this is the type of environment it was. So the first thing I meet this police officer, and he's shouting at this young girl in the car, saying, right, you're going to be the first to be arrested. You're going to be the first to be locked up. And she's like, shivering, shaking in a car on her own, trying to get socks on. I'm like, well, mate, we've not done anything wrong. We just, people have been in the sea. They're getting in the van. We're getting in our van, getting changed to go home. And he's like, I said, no, I don't see what the issue is, type thing. Everyone's kept the distance. That's when he's like, and this is all on video. He's like, well, this is a gathering. This is a gathering. And I'm like, I fail to understand how it is, like, because my understanding of a gathering before this, and I actually said this in court, like, I've probably got PTSD from the word gathering now, but my understanding of a gathering beforehand, it's a group of people who meet up, have a few drinks, have a conversation, this, that, and the other. This wasn't that. This was like a 5-minute dip in the sea, at distance from everyone else, spread out across Laxey Beach, and then getting back in your van, getting dry to go home. A little bit of the hard to do, always do the horse stance to warm up. You'll know a bit like that because you've been to my workshop, and Wim's been doing it all over TV, so it's quite a famous move. Helps the blood circulation flow after you got out of the cold, so that you don't go into what's known as the after drop, which is where the cold blood from your extremities, from here, and your legs and feet, because the body's intelligent, it wants to protect the core. So the body wants to protect the core, so this always stays at 37 degrees to protect the organs. Just think about it, like, you could survive with a numb hand, or with losing your hand, you can still make it to safety. It's survival, isn't it? Fight or flight. If your organs shut down, you're not going anywhere. So I always like to do it as a kind of a safety method before I get into a warm van or go off them a day. Just let's get the circulation going, get that warmness running around the body, and this cold blood mixing from it. It can feel quite nice as well, quite euphoric at times. So I did that, and and whatnot. So this guy's anyway shouting, "This is a gathering," and I'm failing to figure out how that's a gathering. But I didn't like the way he just straight away threatened this young girl. He could have first, said, "Listen, guys, what's going on?" This, that, and the other. So anyway, one of the guys on the beach, he was there. He was in a car, just a couple in front of me. Was like, just out of interest, what's considered as a gathering? And the officer turned around and said, "Anyone leaving the house is a gathering." So this guy was like, "Right, okay, so if I take supplies up to my nan, who's in isolation, and I drop supplies off to her, technically then I'm guilty of gathering." So and when he couldn't answer that question, because I think he was so, emotionally tired. It was an emotionally charged time in the world. So, don't hold that against him. But, he then said, "Right, well, no one's wearing a mask," because he couldn't answer that question. And so for me, knowing about breath work and how we can actually heal ourselves via breathing, that's what I told him. I told him about the interleukin 6 and interleukin 8 and interleukin 10. And I said, so via breathing, we can actually heal ourselves, reduce inflammation in the body, this, that, and the other. And I tried to teach him that science. And then at that point, he says to me, he's like, "Right, now you're arguing with me. Get in your van. Before I think about locking you up, get in your van and go home." I was like, "I'm not arguing with you." I said, "I'm just trying to teach the science behind breathing," but fair enough. I got in my van and I went home. So I get home that day, and then, for me, that was like, right, okay. I still don't think I've done anything wrong. There was no real warning like you asked there. For me, a warning is going, right, I'm going to need your name and your details. I'm going to need to get your book out. I'm going to need your name. All right, I'm now giving you an official COVID warning. You put all the details in your book, and then you get to sign it, countersign it, so you've acknowledged it. None of that happened. It was just that conversation. And then I went home. Next thing, my phone's going off, and people are saying, "Are you trying to see if I was okay?" and all the rest of it. I said, "I'm fine." I was like, "Was that you down Laxey Beach?" I was like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Oh, people aware of this type of thing." And then the police have put out a media post saying that they responded to a group of people that were gathering, and that, they all dispersed when we got there, and this, that, and the other. It's like, I stood and have a conversation with you, or you were threatening people when I was trying to have a conversation with you. And so that was false. So that's when I, in response, made a video just to let people know it was okay. I told people what had kind of really gone on and whatnot, and I said I didn't agree with it. But, in hindsight now, would I have made that video? Probably not, but it's like everything happens for a reason. So it's like everything was happening, and I need to put my side of the story over because it was wrong, which got said. So that being said, the next day I decided, well, this is my morning routine. It's what I do for my mental health. I'm going back down the beach, and I said that in my video. I actually even invited the police down to say, look, because they only turned up the end, Yeah, but I was hoping that they'd, actually come and see what it was and enforce the law. Say, right, make sure everyone kept the distance, make sure everyone was safe, and actually support it. People going into the sea and whatnot, and if they were there, for me it's like weight off my shoulders because they can make sure everyone's keeping the distance. It's not the pressure on me. It's just like, well, I've not done anything wrong. You can see what it is from start to finish, rather than just trying to make an uneducated opinion of people getting in the van and believing that it is some kind of gathering. And so me being an optimist, I thought, right, okay, that's it. So I'm going down the beach that next morning. I didn't sleep that well, and I'm going down the beach. I slept in a little bit, and as I'm on the way down to the beach, there's a van on Old Laxey Hill, and I actually waved at them. How you doing? Got down to the beach. There was people already there. Some people were already, I think, had been in the sea or they were waiting, and so I turned around, parked where I normally park on the beach, and then I get out of my van. I acknowledged the police there. Police acknowledged that I was there. I'd seen this back because I've got all the body camera footage, so they knew that I'd arrived. I got unchanged, stood there, got unchanged, took my robe off, took everything off, and then was allowed to go and conduct my morning dip. I won't even call it a swim, I call it a dip.
So you assume at this stage, it's your thought process, the police are here to just check everyone's doing what they should be doing, distance-wise.
Yeah, and people aren't breaking the law, which I thought, right, great, perfect, So I go into the sea, then people started going into the sea, spread out. I think there was 11 of us in total, spread out across Laxey Beach. And then, I got out, did a bit of my half stand. Some people started to copy me, which actually got said on the stand when I finally got my trial. And then, so I thought, right, well, I'll walk up to the beach. And as I'm walking up to the beach, that's when the same officer arresting officer, basically arrest me. And he actually arrested me for inciting a gathering. That's what he said. Those were his words when he arrested me. But they put out in the media that I was the organizer of a gathering. They did it. I think they did it on both days. I can't remember now. I'll have to look back over it. But then I was taken off to the police station. I wasn't allowed to get dry. I wasn't allowed to get any clothes on. They did say, "Oh, we put your dry robe over the top of you to try and keep you warm." But it's like, well, that's really not.
Can I appreciate the case is done now?
Yeah.
Obviously, the result speaks for itself. But looking back that day before when you posted and said, I presume I do this every day. I'll be down there tomorrow.
Yeah.
That language, could you see from their side why they see that you're potentially inviting people to a location which would be perceived as a gathering?
Yeah, I can see it from both sides. I'm not a stupid man. I can see it from both sides of the coin. But for me, it's like I was never inviting anybody down. I was just saying, this is where I am. This is where I am. Where I am. And I've been doing it for years. Like I said, I can't force anybody to get out of bed at 6 o'clock in the morning and come down to Laxey Beach. It's not up to me. It's up to them. And if anyone was taking part in a gathering, it's other people who just came to where I go for a swim, isn't it? It's not, I'm the one,
I think that's it, because I remember seeing it that night as well, and I think that hit social quite big because of the story that had come out, your response, that had naturally given the whole subject massive scope and eyes on it that created this.
Yeah.
You can see both, you can see both sides where normally you're just doing your thing. However, because of the news, because of the response, suddenly loads more people are seeing it, and it feels like it could be seen like that, in that sense of
yeah, I totally get that, and for me it's like, so that's why when you look into the definition of gathering, so like throughout the whole proceedings, I won't get into that, I'll go over that in a bit, but like for me their version of events is that a gathering is two more people meeting outside the house for the same conversation. Then anybody, so the dog walks on the beach, they would then potentially kill him. In my eyes, the Black Lives Matter protest that took place during the first lockdown, where 1,000 people, walked on the beach along the promenade, they weren't really social distancing, didn't really keep that. That was more of a gathering. People were talking to each other. That's a gathering or a protest, whatever you want to call it. The police officers, they actually gathered for their lost comrade. I think in the first lockdown as well. They'd actually passed away from COVID, and they had a 30-man gathering outside the police headquarters, where they all stood there, social distance. But they had a gathering, and we weren't allowed to go out and 10 people, more than 10 people at a funeral, as they kept repeating over on the video footage. But these were allowed, and then even after I got arrested, Manx Care, they went and had a meeting inside at the hospital, the most high risk place on the island. They had a meeting in a boardroom that was closed off, where they couldn't even keep social distancing, and they said, we had the windows open. And it's like, and they sat there and talked for however long they talked for, and then they tried to remove all their posts and their video pictures and stuff offline and get rid of it, and they put out a public post on Manx Radio and all that, and no one was warned, no one was arrested, no one was slandered in the media. It was like,
so go back to you being arrested.
Yeah.
You're taken away to the police station, I assume.
Yeah.
You were just touching on, were you robed at this stage, or?
Yeah. So there was a few people, and this is another thing that I don't agree with, which got brought up in the first time of trial. There's a few people shouting abuse at the police officers, and I don't agree with that. I don't agree with defunding the police, and I think the police officers are needed. I think we've got some great police officers on our island, and I've seen that firsthand. But it's just a shame about a few bad apples. So I got arrested. I was getting transported to the van. Some people were shouting some stuff at the police. I think some people were shouting paedophile protectors. We got brought up in the court as well. But they were other people's words. They weren't mine. If you had an issue with that, go and arrest those people who were shouting that and giving you abuse. I was peaceful. I walked off peacefully. I went into the back of the van, tried to ask me if I had anything in my pockets and search me. It's like, I've just got out of the sea. By the time I was just like, honestly, I was gobsmacked that I was now sat in the back of the van with handcuffs on. I was freezing cold, soaking wet. And then And then the same officer who'd been so kind of aggressive the day before, and was actually who had arrested me. We then went off. We drove up to, I think we got up to past just halfway along the LA Straight, somewhere near there, and he pulled over. And I was struggling at that point. It's the first time I've had a proper after job, even being on the mountain in Poland. It's like, because I was focused, because I lost my focus. And I was that gobsmacked. I was shivering in the back of the van with the handcuffs on. And because the handcuffs were so tight, my chest was enclosed. So it was hard to take a proper deep inhale and try and warm myself up. So I was doing my best as I could to breathe as much as I could. And then they pulled over, and the officer opened the door. And I see this now as being like, oh, I've done wrong. I'm now trying to go and offer him a tinfoil blanket. And I was like, well, I've got my dry robe on my back. It's got a big towel in it. I was like, if I can get that on, I'll be good, because I was, shivering. So anyway, he opens the door. He's like, try something with a blanket. I said, no, I'm okay, but can you remove the handcuffs? I said, I need to move to generate heat. And this is all on. Just by coincidence, he took body camera footage in that moment of him opening the blanket and opening the door to show what he was doing. So I asked, I said, oh, can you take the handcuffs off? He said, can't do that. I said, well, okay. And he says, we can give you this. I said, no, it doesn't matter. It's all right. I'll deal with it. And then he went, right, because you've been so good, I'll take the handcuffs off. I went, right, much appreciated, thank you. And I was still gracious. I was still saying thank you, much appreciated. Put my dry robe on, and that was it. And then when I got to the headquarters, I was told by one of the officers, right now, Ian, you can come in now and get dry and get warm and all the rest. So I was like, oh, thank you, much appreciated. So they get to the airlock door, and as I'm getting to the airlock door, it's like, right, you can't come in now unless you put a mask on. I'm like, sorry, well, I'm exempt from wearing a mask. And they're like, what's your exemption? So I was like, well, I'm a doctor, I'm not at liberty to tell you my private medical history. It's against the law for me to tell them and them to ask me that. So they're like, you don't dictate to us. You'll tell us what your exemption is, otherwise we'll handcuff you, strip you naked, and we'll force you into the mask. I was like, right, okay. So I was like, right, so I told them what my exemptions was. I was asthmatic, and I had childhood trauma from having asthma attacks from covering my face as a kid. Well, you wear that mask, otherwise we'll force it on you. Right, so I thought, you know what? I don't want to get into any violence and things like that, because I knew that would be used against me. And what happened from my other family member who had a similar thing happen to them 10 years ago, who was suffering with their mental health, had the same thing, but they were actually assaulted, and they were actually grabbed from behind, and they were taken into a cell and stripped naked and had the clothes thrown out, something my mother had to watch happen on the video footage, which she fought for the video footage for months. And then that same family member was then had assault charges put on them, even though it turned out that she was the one who'd been assaulted. So this happened previous. So I have every reason to kind of hate on the police, but I don't. I've like I said, there's some great police officers in there, but I knew that, okay, I thought, right, well, everything's going to be recorded, that's fine. Put your mask on. So I put the mask on. He brought me in, stood me in front of the desk. Right now we're going to book you in. And because I was in such a vulnerable state, and now I've got a mask on my face and I'm struggling, and I need the breath to help me warm up, and it's blocking my airway and bringing back all this stuff. So I'm like, right. So I stood there in the horse stance position. I had my hands in my dry robe and I had my head down, and they trying to ask me questions. I said, the first thing that comes to me, I don't understand, I don't consent, and I forgive you for following your orders, for just following orders. So after saying that, to the police, they was like, right, we're going to bring you into the side room now, we'll let you get dry and get changed. So they give me this big blue blanket to get dry with. So I got dry with that. Give me these prison PJs, these grey PJ bottoms and tops, watch me get changed and all that, because I was still dripping water all over the floor from my shorts, and I still had my flip-flops on. So I took them off, went back out, and then they were like, right, we're going to do a risk assessment now. And I'm still, shivering. I'm like, mask on again. And I'm like, same again, don't understand, don't consent, I forgive you for following orders. So the next thing, he said, right, now we can't risk assess you. If you don't, now we can't risk assess you, so you're going to have to go into a risk suit or a suicide suit. So I was like, right, okay. So if you refuse, we'll handcuff you, strip you naked, drag you into the cell, strip you naked, and force you into it. I said, and that's the point, I think I said, well, at no point have I been abusive, at no point have I resisted, at no point have I been violent. I said, fair enough. So turned around, walked off to the very end cell, which they had me in, and I threw the mask off on the way in. They watched me get changed again into the wrist suit, which is all Velcro and all that, so you got no ties and nothing. And then they gave me a blanket. So I said, "Oh, can I have another one, please?" So I sat there, 2 blankets on, got dry. Before then, I then got allowed to had someone come in. He was a lovely police officer, absolutely lovely. A guy called Neil. I won't mention his second name, but he was a brilliant guy. And we spoke, and he said, "Oh, I'm going to be doing your interview," and all the rest of it. And we got on really, really quite well. So it was just those 3 that kind of was bringing me in and doing this whole process. And then when I got the video footage later on, I found out that the arresting officer, on his approach to arrest me, was like, "Showtime, this is going to kick off now." It's like, and this is the type of mentality that was getting said to bring me in. And it's like, and it just didn't make sense to me. So I was very polite. I was very, I was just me. Like I was ended up doing yoga in the cell, and they're knocking on my door. "Would you like a drink?" And I'm like upside down in all these positions. They're like, "Oh, sorry," and I'm like, "Oh, don't worry. Yeah, I'd love a drink, thank you," and a shower and everything else, which was great. And so there was some great officers up there that really looked after me. Like,
were you charged that day?
So later on, after sitting in the cell all day and giving my interview, which I did the same again, "I don't understand, don't consent, and I forgive you for following orders." And we had a great conversation, me and that officer, before we even started the interview. And I said, "Oh, I'm not going to be answering any questions. It's my right to remain silent." I didn't want to. So when I was actually listening and I was looking at some of the questions, I was like, some of them are aimed to try and trip me up here. And it was like, no, I didn't want to. I just thought, you know what, I'm going to say nothing because, that's my right. You have the right to remain silent. Mm-hmm. Anything you will say will be used against you. So I was like, right, okay, well, I'm not going to say anything then. And I didn't understand like the whole, what was being said outside and everything else and what was conducted. So then that day they charged me at I think it was 5 o'clock at night around that time with participating in a gathering. So
was any of the other people charged?
No one. I was the only one.
Was anybody else questioned?
I was the only one that was arrested. And actually on the video footage, when I finally got the body camera footage, the officers saying there's a conversation firstly with like the senior officer on the day saying, right, spread out across the beach. The last thing we want is what they're doing now is photographing us all stood like this, gathering and organised. So it's like they're going, right, okay, well, I'll go here and I'll go there. And then 2 police officers speaking to each other, and they're like, one officer who, I thank him for asking these questions and having a bit of morals. And he said, what are we doing about the people who are swimming? And this officer was like, nothing. He's like, so why are we down here then? He's like, for the man in the orange shorts. It's like, so it's just him that's getting arrested. I was like, yeah. And it's like, right, okay. So,
I appreciate the following question. It's just your opinion.
Yeah.
What the answer is. Why you?
That's a good question. I think maybe because I was vocal about what happened to the young lady the day before, and I challenged the police officer from threatening her. So for me, the way I see it, I stuck up for a vulnerable young woman.
Can I just interject there? So only because I think it's important that, and I sound like the others, I think devil's advocate is always good in these situations. That's obviously when you talk about
absolutely
the language the police officer used that's your opinion that you felt he was out of line. Now, if he was sat here, he might have a different opinion of that.
Yeah, he might do.
I mean, just bring that as I'm not disputing.
Absolutely. I mean, and anyone who's, in the future, maybe it depends on what goes on, but, anyone can look at the video footage, and I've got nothing to hide. And that was one thing throughout the whole thing was, the fact that they slandered me in the media, the fact that they part lies that I organised this gathering. I was never charged with organising. I was charged with participation. So I was arrested for inciting. They put out in the media while I was still in the cells that I'd organised it, and then they charged me with participating in the gathering.
Those 3 different things. Do you think they're, that's the best way to describe this, poor admin from because they're all similar things, albeit you can be prosecuted for the different scenarios. Do you think that was just sloppy?
I think it may be like,
an example
what can we get him on? Because he said that he's not organising. It might be more difficult to get him for organising because I didn't organise it. You can't deny that he's participated or that he's been on the beach. So we'll just get him with that. He's not done. And so some of the questions in the interview were like aimed as if to say, by inspiring people, you basically then incited. And it's like, and I'm thinking. some of these questions, and I can't remember them probably off the top of my head at the minute, but with kind of aim like that. So I was like, so I'm glad I said the no comment thing, because that was kind of tripping me up. So
do you think that put their back up?
Possibly, they might have seen it as me being
difficult.
Yeah, difficult is a good word. But I was just didn't want to create a situation where I said anything that potentially might get me in trouble when I'm meaning well. And some of the police officers, when like I said, were great. I had great conversations with another guy called Richard, Neil, Kirsty. It was fantastic, and she's like, we're coming up to the cell, and she's like, we don't normally get to talk to people like this, and we're having conversations through the thing. I said, well, I've got nothing to.
I know you well enough that you're not an insightful person that would be,
this is
be
it.
Confrontational, difficult for the sake of being difficult. You'd have motive for doing that. So if your motive to be quiet is because of that, it's not because you want to be annoying or.
So that's it. So like all that time of when I was in the holding cell, they put that my whole time in custody as unused evidence because they didn't say it was relevant because I had not done it. I just spoke to them politely. I was very nice. I was very polite. I still didn't want to cooperate with anything that we're saying. I wanted to just keep it very basic, and that was it. Even the fact that what's your name? I was like, well, I don't understand, don't consent, and I forgive you for just following orders.
So then you released that evening, I think.
No, so I wasn't actually released till the next day. So you know what I'm like with fasting. So before all this started, I actually did a 14-day water fast. I actually broke my 12-day record, if you want to call it that, from last time. So I'd done that. And so I was in the cell and they were a bit worried about me and they were like, Ian, you've not eaten all day. Can you eat? I said, listen, I'm used to eating, not eating. Don't worry about me. I'm fine. And they're like, what? And one of the guys was trained and he actually trained my friend, Jamie, I talked about in the last podcast. And so we knew Jamie and we had this conversation about him in the gym and he's very sports sciencey in his head and I don't understand how your body's not deteriorating. So we had a great conversation. He's like, listen, I'd feel better if you ate something. And I said, you know what? Because I don't do microwaves and I don't do all that other stuff. And he's like, but we'd feel better if you ate. And I said, well, don't eat what you got in there. So I'd rather not, And he was like, well, we'll get someone to go out. And this was brilliant of them. So they rang somebody up who picked me up some food, dropped me some food off. And he's like, he heated it up for me. He's like, let's pretend it's not been done in the microwave. I was like, right, you know what? If it makes you feel happy that I'm going to eat, I'll eat. And then the next day.
Why didn't you release that day? Out of interest.
Because I had to go to court. So what happened then? So that night, and I was adamant. No, I didn't want to see an advocate. I was just, I'd just speak in court myself, which had to be done on Zoom, but it was going to be done the next day. But this is the most heartbreaking bit is then when that night, because of everything that happened to my family member. So apparently, at about 8 o'clock at night, 8:30 at night, Kirsty comes up to the cell and then she's like, oh, I've got a lady on the phone, says your mum. So I'm like, right, okay. Can you put her through? She's like, well, listen, we've had so many phone calls today. She's like, we just want to make sure it's your mum's number. And at the time, I was like, I don't remember my mum's number. Everything's digital in it. But I knew the ending. She went, ends in this. And I went, yeah, that's the one. So then my mum comes through on the speaker and she just breaks down in tears and I'm there like, Mom, I'm okay. I'm like, listen, I'm fine. She's like, oh, people are saying this. And I said, forget about what everyone else is saying. I said, you know who I am. You know that, it's not whatever they're saying, just ignore it. I said, because, I was like, I'm totally fine. Don't worry about me. I was there, I've got my mum crying on the thing. I'm nearly breaking down. I've got my head on the thing. I'm just saying, Mum, I'm okay. Just don't worry. She's like, and she was adamant that she wanted me to get an advocate because of everything that happened before. So I was like, listen, if that's what you want, I don't want it, but if it makes you happy, then I'll do it. So the next day, I told them before they left, I said, listen, the duty advocates have finished now. We'll get you in first thing in the morning. So the first thing in the morning, I got the duty advocate and I got the phone. And I told them everything, I said, this is why I do what I do with, mental health and this, that and the other, and my mum and everything else and whatnot. And he was amazing. He was really good. It was nice to speak to someone, to be fair. And then, and he was like, right, okay. And then I put it forward and I said, whatever people said on the beach, I said, they're not my words. And, because I think I got an inkling that they were going to try and use that against me. So I didn't want to incite any violence or anything like that. That's not me. I just want everyone to be communal, you know, and be nice to each other. So anyway, so went into court, and I'm sat there in a little room, and this is where I'm finding out where I'm going to get bailed or where I'm going up to Derby for 2 weeks. And without a shower, without a wash, which I found out later on, this is what they did to other people. They put them straight up to Derby, went into a cell, weren't allowed out for 2 weeks, weren't even allowed a shower or wash or anything, which is completely horrendous, which is a breach of human rights, but we won't go into that just yet. And so anyway, I'm sat there in the court, and this prosecution, she's grilling me. She's like, he did this and he's done it before, and he should be remanded because, you know, he's clearly breaking all the rules. And it's like, and then the people were shouting this stuff on the beach, and my advocate at the time was like, they're not his words. They're not, you know, he's never been in trouble. He's, you know, he's got a couple of convictions that shouldn't have even still been on the record, but were from like 2003 or 4, something like that. And it was like, so, and none of them were violence. None of them were, you know, really anything. I think one was a drunken disorderly, and one was a minute amount of cannabis that was found on me at the time during TT when I was 17 or something stupid. So yeah, there was all offences that were not relevant, and she was adamant she wanted me to go up to Derby, but luckily the judge seen sense, and she said to me when she was letting me out, she basically said, right, you're going to be getting bail. And there's a few people in the room with me at the time that were like, they were happy that I was getting bail, and so the judge said, listen, Ian, said, we can't stop you from going into the sea or things, but can you refrain from making any social media posts, and can you just, you know, you can go into any other beach or any other sea or river or whatever, you know, we can't stop you from doing that, but can you agree to that? I said, yeah, I'll give you my word, basically, that's what I'll do if you let me out. So basically that's what they did, they bailed me, and then I stuck to that. I made hardly any Facebook posts for the whole year. I kept very silent. I didn't want to start shouting my mouth off and saying this, that and the other, and that.
Is it hard not to do that?
Yes and no, because there was a time, because just the backlash that it caused on my family. I mean, I'm a man, I can take, you know, whatever people want to throw at me. You know, I don't live my life in fear of what people think about me anymore. I took that mask off a long time ago. But for my family and what they had to deal through, you know, like, you know, that was one hard thing for me. Like my dad going down the pub and people talking about it, and him getting angry and stuff like that, and then taking it kind of out of me, and then my mum having to deal with stuff, and that was the hardest part of it. Yeah. Just seeing the effect that it had on my family, especially when in my heart I was trying to help other people's family members or help them help themselves from taking their own lives. And you know, so for me, it was the way I got portrayed in the media then, and everything else was kind of wrong. I kind of got slandered when I didn't think I deserved that. And
yeah, and I don't want to go on about it again, but I'm guessing after looking at the first video, if you then, because again how it blew up again, that everyone knew about it, if you then do another post or video or anything, it'll be scrutinised to the nth degree,
and it caused more controversy, and I didn't want that. That's the last thing I wanted. That's one of the reasons why I invited the police down. It's like, right, okay, if this is, you know, kind of supported type of thing. So then obviously after that, I had an advocate, I got the time, and I spent a lot of time.
You got rid of them?
So yeah, in the end, so I got the advocate that I first had in court, he was, you know, I then went and got another advocate, I won't mention by name, but I got him, and at the time, you know, I knew a lot from years ago from everything that I looked into about the common law thing and the birth certificate and all that stuff, and how if you go into court, kind of, you need an advocate to speak for you because you're classed basically as either dead or a delinquent in that kind of world from that type of understanding. So for me, I was looking at things, and then when I was speaking to my advocate, so I got all the witnesses' names together, I rang them round, I got them all together, I provided them.
You were doing this work while you had an advocate?
Yeah, so I got him, tried to find out, because I didn't know half the people who were down on that beach. It was like, right, and obviously Isle of Man's small community, everyone knows everyone. Just something else I said in court. And I said, right, okay, so I ran round, spoke to people, I was like, who's on the beach, this, that and the other, got all the names together, found out who might be willing to testify in court to what actually happened rather than what was being said.
And at this stage, were you gathering this really to hand over to the advocate?
Yeah, so I did that and handed that over to the advocate. He then said he'd contact them. But then it was actually the secretary that contacted him, and some of the witnesses were kind of a bit thrown off by that because it's, you know, quite intimidating. And at any point I said, listen, you don't have to do this for me. You don't have to go on, the stand if that has to happen and do this for me. Like, I really don't. You were there to help yourself. I don't want you to put you in an anxious environment where you feel like, your anxiety levels gone through the roof. That's the last thing I wanted these witnesses to do. But they were all adamant because of what happened that, no, we want to do this. We seen what happened and we're willing to go through that ourselves. And I really didn't want them to go through that. So much so that, like, further on down the line, I said, listen, guys, if I can end this now and I'll flip and go guilty to stop you guys from going to court and have to put you through that trouble, I'll do it. I'll get thrown under the bus if that's what you want. And they were like, no, absolutely not. You've done nothing wrong. You don't deserve it. So, we're willing to stand for you. And I'm so blessed and grateful for those guys, because that is massive,
So what point, not necessarily decision on why you didn't want an advocate, but what point through that process did you decide to part ways?
So it was, and I regret this as well. So like I said, I made many mistakes, but I'm someone who, you need to make mistakes to learn. But yeah, exactly. So so at some point, I was just having a few meetings with the advocate, and it just didn't feel right. It just did not feel right. I was, I go off my intuition a lot, and it was very, what's the word? Mechanical, systematic. I don't know what the word is, but it was like, no point was ever like, right, this is horrendous. You've not done this. We'll get you off. It was all more financial and this, that, and the other in a plea bargain. And I was like, this doesn't sit right with me. So then, it was mad how more and more people just came into my world. But I put a document in that had like common law. It was like not respecting the court's jurisdiction. It had like thumbprints on it in red and all this other stuff, which now I look back and I kind of cringe at that stuff now. But I put that document in the day before I went and seen the advocate, who was literally next to the courts. And we sat down, we spoke, and we were in court the next day. And then we literally got the unused evidence file and, to build your case the day before I was going into court. So it was like, didn't have no time to prepare, anything like that. It was very rushed, and I put this document in, and I just didn't have the balls to tell him. I just really didn't have the guts to tell him. That's my fault. So the next morning, we're going into court, and he's like, "What's this document you put in?" We're gonna brought into the side room. He's like, "I can't represent you now. I cannot represent you." I said, fair enough." I said, "I should have told you last night." I said, "That's my regret. I do hope you can forgive me. I wholeheartedly apologize. I just bottled it. I just, it was one of them things, trying to sack him, and and that's not really a thing that I'm good with." So, comfort zone again. So I was like, right, and I shook his hand and he's like, right, okay, no worries, I understand this and the other. And then when we went straight out into court, it was like, straight away he was doing the handover, and it was like, he was threw me under the bus, and I don't blame him, because I kind of threw him under the bus, so it was tit for tat, not the way I.
What were you in court for that day?
That was for my first pre-trial, to go over what had been done and said, and so then he basically handed me over saying, this is a massive waste of taxpayers' money. We've got this on legal aid and yada yada, and all this stuff. Which was like, he was telling me the day before, you're gonna get £250. He's gonna get £250 an hour on legal aid and all this, and I'm never one for taking off the government. The first time I ever had to was during the lockdowns and stuff, because I had to live, I had to eat, And I've never done that. I've worked my whole life. I've worked since I was 14, so it didn't make sense for me to get handouts. And anything, I feel like I saved the taxpayer all that money from him being paid what he was going to get paid. So
that's that pre-trial date from the arrest.
So that was in April. The first one was in April.
Quick.
Yeah. So I think it was within 3 weeks or something like that. It was in April, so end of March. Then it was in April. And so after he did that and kind of was like, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink and all this other stuff. I think it actually got put out in the media. It was the only one pre-trial that got put out in the media. All the ones after that didn't. So it was like, for me. So then I did. So I was in there and I stood up in court and I challenged the jurisdiction of the court, which, now looking back, is I respect the court now. Wouldn't ever go down that road, but it's all part of my learning process. Yeah.
May sound a silly question. Were you nervous?
Yeah, massively nervous on that first time in court, and every time I got a letter through the post, my stomach was churning. I was like, oh, what are they gonna say now? And it was,
nervous about. Yeah, I was gonna say nervous about what then? Because if with you feeling that you're confident that you did no wrong and all that, and what were you then nervous of, that people wouldn't believe it, or what made you feel like that then?
Just because I literally sat my advocate that morning. I was going down the common law route, but I didn't really understand the common law route. So really, I was just fresh learning, and I was like a rabbit in the headlights. You know, it was like I've been thrown into the lion's den, and I was like, right, this is a totally different environment, totally different world to me. I'm used to getting out of my comfort zone, but this was totally different. This is me massively out of my comfort zone. So now I'm trying to think, and I got railroaded. The judges asked me, what do you mean by this document? And I couldn't answer it really. I couldn't explain it properly. I was like, and a lot of that stuff is to do with trust law stuff, and I know nothing about that. I wasn't going to pretend to try and know nothing about it. And I think they knew that I knew nothing about it. So, I just wanted to, I knew that I was telling the truth, and I was defending my rights. And I was saying from the first day in court, I was saying, right, and I said, I need evidence of this warning that has allegedly took place, because in the police statement, it was like, oh, we give him an official COVID warning. Oh, I knew that didn't take place, and I knew that, at no point was I ever told, right, now you're on a warning. If you go back down the beach again, you're going to be arrested. For me, it's like common sense. If I'm not stupid, if he'd have given me an official warning like that and took my name, took my details, I would not have gone back down that beach the next day. I'm not stupid, like I said. So I was like, well, I need to see evidence of this warning. They're like, well, the prosecution, like, there is no warning. But in the unused file, there was 2 warnings that got handed out a week later to 2 other people on that beach. They got handed out at the house at 8 o'clock on a Monday night. Got the video footage for that as well, on the body cam. And they got handed out. And now, what was perfect, well, not perfect, but what was good about those is one had, where one person had signed it, but said he wanted to be contacted by the police officer because he wanted to understand why he was given a warning. He didn't understand, like, why am I being given a warning? The other one refused to sign. So I had 2 notebook entries of warnings, how they were given out, how they were presented, and this was in the unused evidence file that they didn't need to use. So I've got these warnings there, and like I said, it's got the name, the address, contact details, signature that they've seen it or refused to sign. Yeah, phone number, whatever. So I'm asking for this notebook entry on the first day, and it's like, well, there is no warning. We don't believe there is a warning or whatever, so there's nothing to disclose there type thing. So then I started, after that first time in court, which is like, I've gone back and got the transcripts now, I've got all the audios for every court appearance, and I've gone back through and studied them. And then when I gone back later on and studied that one, it was like, oh, it does make me cringe a bit, because I was just like, didn't know what I was doing type of thing. So I decided, right, okay, I need to just study more. So like literally I just completely focused, and like my whole world was just 9 till 5, well, 5 till midnight or whatever it was, just studying law and finding out and studying with people who had success in defending themselves and winning their own cases and things like that.
Did you just reach out to people?
There's certain people that I'd reached. I didn't even really reach out to certain people, but it's mad how the universe works. Because in my heart, I was doing what was right, and I said after that day, when I left court that day, I was a broken man. I was nearly in tears. I was in the car. I had my girlfriend at the time with me, and then people who so I had ex-police officers. I don't know whether I mentioned the name on here, but who'd reached out to me. Who got years and 30 odd years of experience. They said the way you were arrested was horrendous. It should not have been handled like that, and this, that, and the other. And people like that, because I went down this common law route, it just completely cut ties with me. So it was like I'm left on my own. So at the time, I always try and get inspiration wherever I can. So people like Tyson Fury always talks about at that moment when he was close to killing himself. He was on his knees in his bedroom, and he's like, come on, just give me something. So that's why I was like, I got back and I was like, come on then, universe, give me something. I know in my heart I'm doing what's right here. I'm doing what's right. And it's mad, the next day, a phone call came out of the blue. I ended up with someone else who could kind of give me some advice and some help and a helping hand. And I sat there and had a 2-hour conversation with him. And he straight away, he's like, I know you're not, what's being said, because everyone knew about it. And I was like, right. So that was amazing. Then more other people, like Steve Gardner, I'll mention, a friend of mine, and he was now a friend of mine. I didn't really know him at the time, but he's very much looked into the common law side of things and defending yourself. And it was actually, he was a godsend as well, because me and him, I came up with, or found this paralegal course that I could study and learn law on by an advocate who had 40 years of experience in this, that, and the other, and he was teaching you the process of how everything works. You can't play the game if you don't know the rules. Yeah, so I started going
was going to say you went on this course.
So yeah, so I got that course, and it took me a while to even start learning that course. I was going down, like I said, I was more focused on the common law stuff and trying to put affidavits in. So my understanding of affidavit is like you put an affidavit and that's a document of truth, and anything you put in that document that is false, you could be subject to perjury, you can go to jail for it. So I was like, right. So I used I put a declaration of truth and a statement of truth, and I put everything in it. It was like 17, 18, 19 pages long, however pages long, and it details everything. So I was asking questions in it. I want the warning, I want this, I want that, and this is what happened. And I went through all the police body camera footage, which I also received, and I went through it word for word.
Did you have to ask for that footage?
Yeah, so they gave me the footage. I got given the footage in the unused evidence file, or part of the evidence file, which is what I asked for. So, the prosecution...
What was it like sort of loading that up and starting to watch that?
That was hard, but it was eye-opening as well, because I got to see it from their perspective. I got to see it from, like, what they were saying and the way they were acting. I was like...
Did it make you more angry? Not more angry. Appreciate you might not have been angry already, but did it?
It's probably harder, to be fair, like psychologically harder, because, I had to rerun every time I got arrested, which was quite traumatic, and like I said, going over the word gathering all the time and hearing what they were saying, on the radio and to each other, and the way it's kind of like I was singled out and everything else. That was quite hard. But the more I listened to it, the more it just became ingrained. I could tell you every bit of video footage on there now, the bits that are relevant word for word, because for me it's like, right, I need to know this like the back of my hand. Just like when I'm looking into health, like I don't want to just know because I'm believing something because I've read it or whatever. I wanted to know it. Okay, I need to know this and I need to learn. So part of that process, so the first thing to do is getting an affidavit in, get that so it's cemented with a declaration of truth or a statement of truth, and that's my statement of truth to go off. So the next time I went into court, I went in with that, and I was like, right, I need to get my affidavits onto the court record, because nothing in the courtroom moves without you moving it. Everything's in motion. This is why you file motions and things like that. And I didn't know this at the time, so I've gone in with these affidavits, and I'm, right, get these on the court record. Get this thing out of the way, thinking, yeah, listening to constant stuff and stuff on the internet and things like that daily, even while I'm trying to do a bit of gardening just to pay the rent. And I've just got my earphones in, listening, constant, all day. So we got back in the court the second time, trying to get these affidavits on the court record, and the judge is like, no, we don't accept affidavits in this court. Straight away, I'm like, right. So I stood there. Oh, and at no point did I go on the stand. I think the first time I went in the court, I think I went on the stand. Every time after that, I was like, I'm not going on the stand. I'm not going in the dock. And they were like, well, why are you not going on the dock? And I was obviously maintaining my common law rights. And it was my understanding that if I go into the dock, that I lose multiple human rights, and I'm reserving all my rights. I'm waiving none of my rights ever. So anyway, this was kind of the back and forth, and it was quite defensive at the start. I was still learning. It was a new environment for me. So trying to get these affidavits on didn't happen again. And the amount of people that were there in the gallery, it probably made me a bit more nervous because the whole gallery was full. And it was like, and I'm trying to get these points home and kind of say, well, I want answers to my affidavit. And like at the time, my understanding of affidavit is if it stays unrebutted, it stands as truth. Because if you're handing out an affidavit, somebody else has to respond and say, this is live because of this, 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 and this. And I had so many points in it. But like I said, it was more set out like a memorandum rather than an affidavit. An affidavit should be a one-line sentence of just facts. So I made mistakes in that. And then the prosecution's trying to say it's not relevant, this, that, and the other. I also put financial claims on certain people's heads to kind of say, like, this is serious. Like, what you're doing is you're acting wrong. You're representing people who've lied at the end of the day. And I'm just trying to tell the truth, and I just want the truth to come out. And I didn't trust that world. I kind of lost faith and trust in the police and also the justice system. Because it's the first time I've ever been through it, and now I'm here for something that I believe I'm innocent of, and I'm thrown into this world now. But once again, I kind of got railroaded in that court. Again, it was like, right, well, and I think the first time in court, the judge was like, your common law values don't matter in this court, and all this other stuff. I was like, right, okay. And, I was very speaking when I shouldn't have been speaking. Type thing. Wasn't respecting the courts, which I regret now, but I apologise for that in letters. So anyway, so that court ended. I didn't get the result that I want. the prosecution admitted to reading my affidavits, even though we'd not responded to them. And then, so the next time, so each time I was going to court, I learned. So the next time I was back in court again, which was a few months later, I think it was in July. And, you know, once again, I've got my affidavits and everything else, and I'm still trying to get them onto the court record. And the judge is like, no, we're not accepting your affidavits.
The people around you telling you to get some
legal advice and stuff like that. Yeah, a bit. But I'd send them notices and things like that. It's like, you're not responding to my affidavit. I'm now giving you notice. A bit like what the taxman does with you. Send your notice, and it's another notice, and then another notice before then you get your fine or whatever. So I was doing that. So you need to answer my affidavit, and I'm sending it to each one of the police because I just wanted the truth. And it was my understanding that to get the truth, put it on an affidavit. I'm willing to go to jail for anything I say that's false on that paper. You do the same, rebut it, then we'll find the truth. But that wasn't happening. So then when I was in court again, this time in July, you know, I was adamant again. I said, listen, you know, I need the warning. And the judge at that point goes, listen, there's no written piece of paper that contains a warning with your name on, created by a certain officer, created by them or anyone else. There's nothing more to disclose there. And I'm like, well, there must be, because if I've been given a warning the day before, there must be evidence of it. And she's like, well, there's not, and basically said it again. So I'm like, right. So I was meant to be in trial in August, 9th, 10th, 11th of August, 3-day trial. And because so many people would turn up at court, the COVID case has gone up again. And on 2 days' notice, I had an email. I didn't realise it they'd been there the day before, but they told me, right, we're vacating your trial date in August. So I was like, right, okay.
Due to backlog.
Due to the fact that the COVID case was going up, and I was turning up with so many people in court, like the whole gallery was packed. It was like
starting another gallery.
So I was like, right, but you know, for me, it's like no nightclubs were closed, no shops were closed, no lockdowns happened, nothing like that. But I couldn't have my trial because of the cases and people coming to the court. It's like, right, okay, this doesn't make sense. You know, if that's the case, why aren't you shutting things down again then? But the nightclubs can stay open, everyone can get as close as they want and go home with different people, but I can't have my court case.
In many ways, was that a blessing in disguise?
Absolutely,
time?
100%. It was now, and looking back in hindsight now, that was probably the best thing that could happen because.
So you spent a whole year or near on a year doing a paralegal course.
Yeah,
collecting evidence while learning how the court systems work, the law system works.
Yeah. So the next time after that, I got back in court in October the 3rd, back in court again. But this time, I'm now going in asking questions. I wasn't trying to get my affidavit on the court record, but I did speak. I went in with the criminal, because I've just printed off all the legislation that I could find, printed it all off when I was going through it, each and every one, night after night, reading it, rereading it, because it's like, for me, it's like reading Chinese. It might as well have been in another language for me, and it's one of my worst things I'd ever wanted to do, and spend my nights till 2, 3 in the morning reading through legislation, highlighting certain bits that might be relevant. But I found an act from 1736, the Criminal Law Act of Criminal Code or Criminal Law Act of 1736. Now, in that document, it says that every man has the right to trial by jury in a criminal proceedings, and on affidavit first made. So me going into the court, right, I've got a document here that cites the law from 1736 that's not been repealed. I can go in and get my affidavits onto the court record using this law. Brilliant. So now I can start citing the laws and using the laws. So I'll go in and say, right, Your Honour, I'm moving, like, the Act of 1736, Criminal Law Act says this, stated it. And said, with that being said, I now move because everything moves in the court, I move my affidavits onto the court record. She's like, no, I've told you this, you can't get your affidavit onto the court record. This is a summary court. We only accept it orally. I was like, right, okay. She told me I can read it out then. Right, okay. So then I went in, and in the background, I wanted to then, not to cause controversy, but I stated that, there's a Freedom of Information request that states that, COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2 has not been isolated and purified, and that we've been running the PCR test at 45 cycles. Now, anything over 25 cycles is giving off false positives. Now, this Freedom of Information request says that, along with another 110 at the time, was health institutions from around the world, from so many different countries, that have also said the same. So I went to try to use that as well and put that on the court record.
For what purpose?
Just to basically going forward, if need be, like, to challenge the legislation then. Okay. And what I learned from any young aspiring advocate to be, you should always be prepared for the appeal court. So be prepared for losing your case, so you don't leave any rock unturned. Be prepared for the appeal court, and that's what that was. I didn't want to cause controversy, but I thought, I'm not winning in all these other ways. I can't get my affidavit onto the court record. I want to put that onto the court record just so it's there. And they were like, no, you'll have to take that with the human rights law courts and all this. I was like, right, fair enough. And then as I'm in the court, we're talking about, I said, Your Honour, I said, I need evidence of this warning. And she went, right, Ian, have you still not received that? I said, no, I haven't. I said, this time I'm sat down, I'm calm, I'm not standing up and disrespecting the courts, because I've learnt. And I'm saying, I need evidence of this warning, I need the notebook entry. There must be a notebook entry, there's some in the unused file. And she went, have you still not received that? I said, no. She went to the prosecution. Can you provide Ian with this notebook entry? Prosecution said, I'm unaware of any notebook entry, I don't think there is one. She went, well, can you ask? And he was like, yeah. So she's like, right, I'll give you 7 days to provide him with this notebook entry. I was like, right, getting there, getting somewhere. So anyway, I said, also, Your Honour, I said, I need video footage from the arresting officer who's allegedly given out this warning from that day, and, of this warning. I'd asked for it in all my documents, and they'd been denied, all my affidavit and everything like that. And she went, have you not received that either? I said, no. And the prosecution's like, well, you've received all the video footage, you've got it all. I said, well, I haven't got his body camera footage from that day when he allegedly gave out a warning. It's not there. I want it. Judge again, okay, can you provide that? He's like, yeah, well, I think he's got all the evidence, but I'll ask for it. Okay, so
would you say they were potentially withholding?
In my view, and I said, Your Honour, I said, just out of interest, I said, what's the official distance that a man or woman has to be in the vicinity of another man or woman for it to be considered as a gathering? And she went, oh, well, I think it's the 2 metre social distancing guideline. I was like, oh, okay, perfect, because I was more than 2 meters away from anyone at all times. And she went, okay, well, there must be video evidence of Ian, in this gathering. To the prosecution. The prosecution said, there is, yeah, but it's clear that he's more than 2 meters away from people at all times. I was like, all right, perfect then. And she said, well, the judge then turns around and said, well, there must be official distance in the statute of legislation. So I'm like, right, okay. So I said, the prosecution then turned around and said, there is no official distance in the statute of legislation. So I went, all right. I said, okay, then Your Honour said, well, of course I'm guilty of gathering, because I had a gathering every single night then with my next door neighbour. If there's no official distance that you need to be stayed in a gathering. And it was like, right, okay. And then the next thing, the prosecution went, no, distance is irrelevant. Distance is irrelevant when it comes to gathering. So I was like, it's like, just rules are just changing here. So I was like, okay. I said, well, if distance is irrelevant when it comes to gathering, I said, of course I'm guilty of gathering. I'm having a gathering right now with someone in Brazil then. If distance is irrelevant, so, anyone would be guilty of gathering. Everyone's guilty then, aren't they, of gathering? So at that point, they were like, all right, we're going to adjourn and whatnot. And I said, I've got one more question. I said, in my charge sheet, which has to be correct, I said, it says on my charge sheet that I was having a gathering with 15 to 20 people. I said, no, I've looked back on the video footage and there's only 11, including me, who went in the sea that day. So I was like, that's wrong. And they just said, well, you know what, Ian, if I see that it isn't a gathering and there wasn't that many people on the beach, I will acquit you. So, right, okay, thank you. And then that was the last of that date. So then it was then scheduled that I would be back on trial because they vacated it. I gave them a date. I said, well, okay, well, I'll give you March 28th because that's when I'm available, because I wanted to have Christmas off. But even though I didn't have it off, but I wanted to have it off because I'd done that much work. I was knackered, I was exhausted. So at the time in July, so they actually got offered the first of 2 cautions that I got offered by the prosecution. And
do you think that case was felt weak? I mean, I guess we're surmising, but would that be the assumption?
For me, yeah, I believe that there wasn't really no case to answer, and it was ridiculous that it had kind of gone on this far. I think I said in court a few times, like, this is ridiculous. But so they got offered a caution in July. And it was at the time when it was, so tempting for me. But, with everything happening to my family member that time that I talked about, and I said at the time, because she got offered a caution, I said to my mum, I said, don't accept the caution. They've done nothing wrong. It's ridiculous. And because the mental health was not in the best place at that moment, it was like my mum said, they're not mentally able to go through that whole process. And I understand that now. I totally get that. But for me, it's like, I just could not live with myself if I end up taking that caution and agreeing to a lie, and a version of events that was untrue. I'd rather die being truthful. That's the way I've been for a long time now, and I have a moral compass, and it was like I can't take that caution. But at the time, Jean, it was Big Steve's wife, she'd just passed away, and she'd actually listened to the last podcast, and she heard me talking about Big Steve, because I always mention Big Steve in my workshops because it was his struggle and his fight that gave me the courage to go and do the Wim Hof method, and Jamie. So it's mad that I ended up with an officer when I was in cell who actually used to train a bit with him and knew him. And then now on this week when we, literally burying Jean, it's like, it's the first time I've ever been to an open casket, and seeing them and say goodbye like that. So for me, that was new. At the same time, and then I got this caution. And I'd actually, which is another mad coincidence, I got given a suit, right? It was meant to get it for next to nothing, but someone just said, no, you can have it. And I was like, okay, it fit me, it was perfect size and all that. And it was actually by a friend of mine who's an ex-police officer, lovely lady. And yeah, she gave me this suit. So it was the first time I wore that suit was for Jean's funeral. I never really had a suit. I had a suit in the UK that I'd left at my nan's for funerals that I'd been to. So I got this suit, and I knew that at the time that was the suit I was going to wear for my trial if it gets to trial. So anyway, so we fast forward now, we're going through Christmas and everything else, and I'm now learning more and more and more about this paralegal stuff. Like every night I'm around at Steve's house, me and him are going through every bit of evidence, every bit of transcript. We're going back, we're relearning everything, we're rewriting everything, going over everything. And it's like, and picking out what we want. So then I started asking for requests for admissions. So I wanted them to, a request for a production, right, which is where I want you to produce X, 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 and X, right? Then I want a request for admissions. I want you to admit you've said this, you've said that, you've said this. Distance is irrelevant when it comes to gathering. There was one point where something else was said, which is an email. I don't think I can divulge that. But there was other things that were said that were just totally ridiculous. And it was like, so I wanted them to admit to this, admit to that. And they have bound by law. So it was a motion to get them to answer it like an order. Moving the court to grant my motion and things like that. To my request for admissions. As part of your discovery request, your allowed discovery. They've got to give you the evidence. Now, one of the things with the evidence is the prosecution has a duty, and this is under the law, to provide the defence with all the relevant information, even if that information undermines the prosecution's case. Okay. So, either way, so did I tell you about getting the warning? I finally got the warning. I didn't go into that, did I? So at the end of October, after 28 days, it should have been 7 days. I should have been provided with the warning in October. So sorry, this was just before Christmas. Then after 21 days, I think it was, nearly 3 weeks, I emailed the clerk of the court, said, listen, I've still not received this warning. Can I have it? Judge said, the prosecution's got 7 days to provide me this warning. Didn't happen. So anyway, the clerk was like, we'll get onto it. If you two can't resolve this between yourselves, we'll have to bring you in for another hearing. And I thought, great, well, then I might be able to get it. You know what I mean? So next thing, the prosecution's like, right, here's the warning. I'm sending it over now. Oh, sorry. He's sending it over now. So I was thinking, right, okay, here's the warning. Notebook entry. It shouldn't exist because I should be aware of it, or I should have had it in my evidence file. So anyway, he sends the warning over. Notebook entry from the police officer, and it's got like COVID warning, Ian Kirk, Laxey Beach, breach of COVID, no address, no fact that I even seen it, no contact details, nothing.
Date on it? Time
on it. So it's got so it's got the date. It's squeezed in at the very bottom of his page as if it's just been wrote fresh. I can't. That's just an opinion. But the time on it is at 6:30. Now, the video footage that the prosecution said that he had of my warning, he had video evidence of it, and then he changed and said it was a verbal warning that you were given, which never happened because it was never on the video footage, if he had just listened to it. is at 6:44. So the police officer wrote the warning out at 6:30, and the video evidence of the warning that the prosecution said he has was just 15 minutes later. So this police officer's, and I knew full well that the police officer didn't arrive to the beach till around 6:44 when the other officer literally recorded the conversation of me and the other police officer. So that didn't make sense to me. It's like, okay, now I've got something to work off. So this is when I started filing the request for admission to admit to this, and you said this on this times, and
you backed them into a corner.
Yeah, well, I would say back them in the corner, but kind of, yeah. I was putting all, asking them to admit everything they said, produce now, I want this for production. One of the first things I asked for was the video footage from the police headquarters. That was one of the first things I asked for in court. And I actually asked it in an email to the prosecution.
Why is that?
Because I wanted to show the character of the people who've been arrested. And, it's like, for me, so when I asked for it, prosecution said it got missed and it wasn't retained. That video footage just went missing. It wasn't retained. And then it was deemed, I don't see how it's relevant to the case. Well, for me, it's like, well, if me or you would have gone into the police headquarters and we would have assaulted a police officer or said something or acted violently, that would have been in our record and that would have been then used against you. Yeah. But in the opposite direction. So if I would have been violent, I'm sure that video evidence would have been there. But because it was the other way around and it was showing kind of how they'd acted and how they were being, it was not retained. To this day, they still say that evidence is not relevant to the case. I disagree. It's up to anybody else who's listening to what they think, whether they agree or not. So the other thing that I was asking for was the direction notice by the Council of Ministers. Now, in the law that I was charged under, it states that gatherings, unrestricted events or gatherings were allowed to take place unless there's been a direction notice issued by a Council of Ministers to say otherwise under paragraph 33C or something like that. So when you go to 33C, it said that there must have been a meeting with the Council of Ministers that issued this direction notice. So I asked for the direction notice because, there's maxims of law, right, and maxims of what my understanding that courts are bound by, and the one-word sentences that can't be changed. One of those maxims is unjust is state power where the law is uncertain or unknown. Meaning that it's, a bit like when Hitler came into power, he changed the law that many occasions. Everyone was breaking the law because no one knew them. And this is why there has to be structure in that. You can't just keep changing laws like they were doing so much so no one can keep up. The common man, the layman like us, we don't understand all these laws that we're changing weekly and daily. And these advocates and lawyers and judges and everyone else should know. They should be keeping up with the law. But if it's difficult for them to understand, how are we meant to know? So I asked for this direction notice that got issued. And I asked for that in, I think it was May. And I still hadn't received it. So in my document for production, I said, I need the direction notice. So this went back and forth. And I got a reply to my request for admissions, which was very this isn't relevant and that's not relevant. And it's like, well, I wasn't asking for that. I was just asking you to admit to all the things you have said. It's just simple, yes or no. So I sent it back again. I said, right, I just want a yes or no, simple yes or no, confirm or deny, admit or deny. You said this, this, and this, and I need this for production, please. And once again, and I was actually away this time. I went over to the UK and I had a gig to do in the UK. And I'm away and I'm literally in the hotel I was staying in and back and forth. And what I've now learned is how to file motions. So like I said before, nothing moves in the court unless you file a motion, right? So I filed in request for admissions, that got denied. And then the clerks of the courts, the receptionists of the court, everyone in the courts, every time I went in, absolutely lovely. Honestly, I can't speak more highly of them. Like literally, they were amazing. So the clerk, I messaged the clerk and said, obviously, I'm not getting a response. I need a response to my document. If I don't, I'll have to issue a motion to compel. Now, issuing a motion to compel is ordering the court or moving the court, because there are courts. So that's another maxim of law, that courts are the people's power to control the state, not the other way around. That our courts, like I said before off camera, like what got me through some of these dark times, because these times where I didn't want to get out of bed, didn't want to see anyone. I was up till 3 in the morning trying to get off work at 6 to try and do a few delivery jobs just to get by on. And, some of the things that got me through those dark times was knowing that there was men who went to war and went into the trenches and, you know, and there's me feeling bad because I've had a couple of hours sleep, where I'd not slept for days. They're in a freezing cold trench. They got bombs going over the top of the head, you know, and they fought for our freedoms, that we can have these laws that can protect us. So when I was going through this, it was like, well, these are the laws that, you know, I was now respecting the court. I understood that these men died so we can have these courts and we can have these laws to protect us. So now I've issued this motion to compel. So to get the prosecution to answer my document. So I moved that, and I've ordered the court. So I asked the court to order it and grant my motion. So anyway, the judge, luckily for me, granted my motion to compel. She's like, right, okay, we need you back in court on the 16th of March. Now this is like 2 weeks before my trial. So we got in court, and I was going through my request for admission. She's like, you can't answer that, you can't answer this, that and the other. Can you? And then we got to the direction notice bit, and I said, I need the direction notice issued by the Council of Ministers that states the law that I've been charged under. I need to know, because otherwise, you know, if he's got it there and he knows the law I've been charged under, this direction notice should have been issued, I need to see the one that says that unrestricted events and gathering are prohibited. You're not allowed to go on the beach, you're not allowed gatherings, this, that and the other. And when in this, so this is all on the court transcripts, and the prosecution's like, I'm unaware of any direction notice. And the judge was like, well, you should be aware of it. He's asked you for it. You should be giving him the law that he's been charged under. Right, okay. So anyway, they had a bit of back and forth, and then talking to the judge, he was like, well, you know, I've said he can look it up online, and he was like 173 amendments to this one, or it turns out 2 lots of legislation. So how am I meant to find a direction notice, which is the one that associates with mine out of all these things? I'll have to go through each one bit by bit and try and find out when they were issued. 173, when you could just give me it if you've got it. But if you're unaware of it and you're the prosecution, how am I meant to be aware of this law that has been issued? So anyway, they had a bit of back and forth, and then all of a sudden the prosecution's like, oh, here's the direction notice. Like, it's like, hang on, I was like, 1 minute he's just unaware of it a minute ago, now he's got a print out of it. Here you go, you can have a copy. I was like, right, thank you. He's like, you can have a read of that. And I thought, well, I'll put it down. I was like, I'll read that later on. So anyway, we left court that day, and now I had another piece of the puzzle. So I didn't get the video footage from the headquarters. I did finally get the notebook entry of a warning, which was, I believe, false. So it was wrong time, no name, no confirmation, nothing like that. And now I also...
Is it admissible, if that's the right word? Is that admissible in court based on it? Because I'd assume for it to be taken as evidence, it has to be done in a prescribed manner.
Well, it's still admissible, yeah, but it's like... For me, I seen that, and I filed motions to dismiss later on with that on. For me, I thought it was like, the police have a duty, and this is under one of the directions that I found. That's stacks of legislation like this high. I found a direction by the judge that states that the police have a duty to provide the Criminal Prosecutions Division 3 weeks with all the evidence. So within 3 or 4 weeks, they should have all the evidence. So I should have it in a news file, and I should have that. And the police officer had not given that warning for 10 months of me asking. I asked for it in April. I got it in October. And I nearly went to trial in August, which is why when you said before, are you happy that didn't go ahead in August? Because I would have gone to trial without the direction notice, and I would have gone to trial without the headquarters footage, and I would have gone to trial without the notebook entry, without the evidence that I needed. Now it says in the law, and there's case law on it, which I found in the Criminal Law Act of written by Manx Criminal Law book written by Deemster Doyle. It's a book this big. It's an amazing book. It's got all the case law and stuff in there. That once again, the prosecution has a duty to provide the defence with all the relevant information in a timely fashion so that he has a chance to build his case, even if it undermines the prosecution's case. So now I've issued this motion to compel. I finally get the direction notice. Now in that direction notice, it states that it came into play, right? So it came into operation at 2 minutes past midnight on 24th of March, 2021. So on midnight, on the day when everyone turned up on that beach that day, which I didn't expect, and because I didn't listen to any of the media briefings.
6 hours later.
Got said 6 hours later, the law was changed, and it states in the direction notice that you're allowed, for the purposes of exercise, to go out and basically with or without someone from the same household, for the purposes of exercise, you're allowed to car share with another family as long as that family is in that same family bubble. I didn't know this at the time, so now I've got the direction notice, and now I'm looking back and that's like, hang on a minute, you can share a car with someone, but you can't be on the beach. Admitted already by the prosecution that I'm 4 meters away from anyone at all times. I barely even had a conversation with anyone. It's like, I've not broken the law. In my eyes, it's like, I'm now looking at the direction notice, and it's like, I've not broken the law. And in my opinion, go on.
So I was just going to say, so I suppose we go right back to the beginning, and that ultimately this is about, did you break the law or not, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've spent sort of 40 minutes in detail here, but that's the point of the whole of this ultimately, isn't it? Is, didn't I break the law? And I guess there's a lot of nuances between the beginning and end, but the beginning is, did I break the law? And here's the...
And now finally, so now this is like a week before I'm going, or just over a week, 10 days I think, before I'm going for my 3-day trial again in March. Now I've got the direction notice, and the direction notice is saying this.
Can I ask you one other question? Because if you come across that, and I would suspect there's an element of belief that, am I almost missing something, because how's this still carrying on the basis of this is pretty clear to you, I would guess.
Yeah.
Whether someone else agrees or not, well, the court ultimately did agree.
Yeah.
But so were you, in your own mind, still doubting, am I missing something here?
Yeah and no. I mean, when I finally got that piece of evidence as well, that was kind of what I was waiting for, because I wanted to know, I wanted to read through it and associate, and I didn't know which direction notice, and I thought, well, if the prosecution's got it there, why not just provide me with it? So go on.
Yeah, no, I just, yeah, no, sorry, go on.
That's all right. So for me, finally getting that, it was like, right, okay. So then I started issuing, like, I think I did like 9 motions to dismiss on separate grounds, where I cited the rules of the court, the law, and the case law to go with it. In some instances.
Why do you think it wasn't dismissed before?
I don't know. But one thing that I found, that the prosecution and the prosecution code, he needs first of all, he said he had the warning that passes the evidential threshold, and then he got the public interest threshold. So he, at any point where his evidence doesn't seem as strong as first thought, he should have the duty to dismiss it, to stop wasting our taxpayers' money, people's money. And, if the case is that, that frivolous, doesn't even need to go to court. Now, at the same time, so in February, this is before even then, I'd been offered a caution again, to take a caution, to agree to their version of events to stop this. So it's like, well, if you're trying to offer me a caution twice, which I've told you, I'm grateful, thank you for offering me the caution, I'm much appreciated. At one point I seem, what, I'll give you an offer, I'll sign a non-disclosure agreement, and we'll figure this out, and it doesn't have to go through the whole court process, because the last thing I want, I love the Isle of Man, I think it's one of the most beautiful places to live, especially when the sun's shining like today, and it's like, I don't want to bring any controversy, I don't want to be having this fight with the police and the government, I want to be helping the police, they're suffering with their mental health, like, don't get me wrong, I lost my best friend in a car accident when I was 20 years old, and that was massive for me. He was a housemate of mine, I looked up to him like a brother. And who's the first one on the scene? Is the police. Who's the first one who's trying to probably drag him out of the car? Who's the problem? The police officers are, the amount of PTSD and trauma that they have to deal with. And I can help them with that. I'd like to do a workshop for the police and the judiciary and people like that. And, all these, I want to work with them, not against them. And this is where I'm coming from, and I'm grateful for the police.
So you end up in court, your 3-day court, I think.
So
when you get towards the, go on, talk through it.
So literally, I was away. I had to go away. I had 2 funerals. A friend of mine who was actually an ex-police officer passed away. At the same time, my mum's uncle passed away, and I had to go away to the UK. So when I was in that, I'd literally got back the day before from being away to do a bit of a gig that I had in the UK, which I mentioned CSR thingy before, which actually gave me the momentum and the inspiration because I was feeling a bit deflated to carry on. So then I get back to the island, I'm back for it in court the next day, and I'm saying to the judge, I'm like, I got the direction notes and everything else, and I had to say, listen, I'm away next Friday, I've got to go Thursday, I've got a funeral to go to, I'll be back literally away Thursday, funeral Friday, back on the Saturday night. So this is right before I'm in court on the Monday. So I've got the Sunday then, and I'm on the boat, and I'm like this, preparing all my documents and writing out questions while I'm going over to this funeral. You know what I mean? My mum and dad and family members just trying to talk to me. I was like, just let me get these questions done. I've got to write this because I get to cross-examine the 2 police officers on the stand. So I'm writing these questions out and thinking, like, what should I say and whatnot. So I'm doing that, and I finally get them done. I'll come back on the Saturday night, and to get ready for the Sunday. Actually, this funny story, I left my ID in the Isle of Man because I came on the boat and I was flying back. I was like, and it only dawned on me the day, like, after the funeral, I was laid there, and like, because we had the bodies in my sister's house, so my mum and dad were upstairs, in the room, and my 3 nephews, like, sharing the front room with me. I literally was on a couch with no duvet, no pillow. I was just like that, curled up. And I'd lay there trying to get to sleep because I think, right, I've got to get this flight tomorrow and whatnot and leave you guys. I was like, I haven't got any idea. I didn't bring I've left it at home. So I'm ringing home and trying to speak to my mate. And literally, I get dropped off at the airport, and I spoke to my mate. He's like, no, it's okay, you can get through. I was like, you sure? He's like, you got the app on your phone? I was like, yeah. He's like, they won't ask you your ID until you get off the plane. Perfect. At least I can get on the Isle of Man. That's because I've got to be in court on Monday. There's no way I can miss it. So anyway, I managed to get through Liverpool, and I got through the whole process, and I just scanned it. And then when I got off the boat, I had a picture of my ID on my phone. So when you got off the plane, not off the boat, off the plane. So I got off the plane, Romans Way. Like, right, okay, they've got to let me through here. They've got to let me through. So filled out the landing card and everything else, and then I had the my ID on my phone. She's like, have you got your ID? I went, yeah. Showed the ID. She just looked at me and went, right, go on. I was like, thank God for that. And my mate outside who had my ID, so he was going to bring it in for me. I rang him up, said, listen, get my ID from the house just in case they won't let me through. And this is Steve, who's my Mackenzie friend, so you can have a Mackenzie friend in court. So he was doing the paralegal course for me, so he was allowed to sit with me. He was not an advocate, but write notes. So that night I was up till God knows what time, 2:00 in the morning, getting ready for making sure the questions were there. And the first day in court, I had the 2 police officers on the stand. And now the first few questions that I was asking was obviously about the warning. And what time did you arrive at the beach? 6:44. How you wrote a warning at 6:30 then? Or wrote that back at Ramsey Police Station. Okay. How am I meant to be aware that I've been on an official warning and not to go back down the beach if you've not even informed me of it and you wrote it back up there? And it was like, well, I've informed you of the regulation. Like, right, okay. The regulation, are you aware of the direction notice then that came into place at 2 minutes past midnight? On that day, you allegedly give out the warning. Well, no. I'll just give you the document. Give them the document. Never seen this document in my life. So you informed me in the regulation that you knew nothing about yourself. How can you appropriately inform me of the regulation? Not only that, I asked him why you didn't take any body camera photos that day. I forgot, the day when he gave out the warning. But on the day that he didn't give out the warning, when it's the show time, this is going to kick off now, he took 11 separate videos. You can take 11 separate videos the day after, but you can't take one when you have officially handing out warnings. Me personally, in my own opinion, is that was because people were getting threatened. And that's why I believe that one, and I only found out later on when obviously I had to speak to them, get statements off the witnesses. Some of the witnesses were saying exactly what further up the beach, where they were, when he first got out of the van, to what I witnessed down here. So that corroborated with that. So also another question I asked them when I had them on the stand was, is it necessary and essential for a man or woman who you're giving a warning to be identified by the name? And can you tell the court the reason why? And at first one of them won't answer the question. I don't understand it. And the judge has to say, well, it's a pretty easy question. So anyway, he's like, well, yeah. I said, okay, and can you tell the court why it's necessary and essential to identify them? So you know who they are? So I'm like, perfect. Like, is it necessary and essential for the man or woman being warned to have their contact details and address to be taken? Well, yeah. Like, can you tell the court why? So you know where they live and where to find them. So, okay. I said, now, is it necessary and essential for the man or woman you're giving the warning to be informed that they've been given a warning and know the reasons why? Yeah. Okay, at any point did you take my name and details? No. At any point did you inform me that I was on an official court warning? No, I informed you of the regulations. Like, that's not what I'm asking you. Did you inform me that I was on a warning? Well, no. And not only that, then that's when we went into, the direction notice. So at this point, this is the first day in court, and we've had a bit of back and forth with the two officers. And for me, I think my case is looking pretty strong because I'm telling the truth, and they're being very vague. And this is what the judge said in their judgments. That some of the officers were being a bit vague, and she didn't like that. They weren't answering. I can't remember, and I can't. It was very. So I'm citing the legislation. So I was like, well, are you aware under the legislation it says this? And at one point, before that, I actually had the Code of Ethics, the Constabulary Code of Ethics. Now, on the very first paragraph of that Code of Ethics, it said that the police have a duty to protect the public and prevent crime. So I asked them, so at any point did you try and prevent me from committing this alleged crime? You knew I was going back down the beach. You not contact me at home the night before, which I thought, they should have done. If, they see my video, which they all admit to on camera, why didn't you come and see me the night before and say, like, Ian, please, you're not to, not even please, but, we just want to have a word with you. Please don't go down the beach tomorrow. We're not to do this, that, and the other. Stop it from happening. Okay, yeah, fair enough. Right, we're going to have to give you an official warning. Or if they understood I was on an official warning, let me know I'm on an official warning. Say, right, you're not going down the beach tomorrow. Okay. Done. It's, no more controversy. But then to allow me to come down to the beach, get out my van, let onto them, allow me to get them changed, allow me to commit the alleged crime, and then arrest me after it. It's like, hang on, why didn't you stop me beforehand? And on the video footage, on the radio saying Kirk's arrived. Not only that, he's saying it twice. So I'm like, hang on a minute, if
you feel they were just after you.
You could have just stopped it. You could have just prevented it from even happening. You could have said, like, listen, you're not going to the sea today. We can't allow this to happen. Can you go somewhere else? We could have questioned it. Or even if I'd gotten a warning and I had official warning and knew about it, I would be appealing the warning rather than going back down the beach the next day to get arrested. Like, so for me, they could have prevented it.
So when it comes to the end of the trial, all the evidence is submitted, the judge just go away and...
So I've got the police officers on the stand and I'm going through the legislation. Next thing, somebody in the court, and I won't mention any names because I don't want to embarrass anyone, but who should know the law, had the wrong law in front of them. There was 2 lots of coronavirus legislation. And this is something I knew because I'd had to look for it. You have to look for it, and there's 2 different ones, and one says one thing to the other, and it was very confusing. So I'm citing the law. Next thing we have to have in the gym, we have to go outside. The police officer have to get off the stand. Me and Steve go outside. And, on the way into court on the first day, I was like, to Steve, and he's not really in that inclined with like the whole universe thing and all that. I'm like, come on then, universe, give me something. I know I'm doing what's right. You know what I mean? I'm in the suit, everything had relevance. I'm in the suit that Jean had wore for Jean's funeral and everything else. And then when that happened, walked outside, I looked at Steve and Steve's like, thank you, universe, because whoever, they should have known about the law. If they don't understand the law, how are we meant to know the people? If those people who were trusted to know the law don't even know it themselves. So we come back in, and the person who had so actually the person who didn't have the right legislation was like, which one have you got? Oh, the same one as you. So I had the right one. It's like, right, great, excellent, continue. And then when I got them back on the stand, it's like, right, you've admitted that you didn't give me a warning. And they were like, no, that didn't happen. We didn't admit to that. And I was like, I think you found from the questions that I asked that you have admitted that, really. But I said, well, go on, we'll carry on. So anyway, that day finished. And it was like, oh, okay, a little bit unaware of how it went. And then the next day, it was me first on the stand. So I was first on the stand the next day. And as I'm talking, I'm going through my side of the story. And I'm on the stand, and next thing, like, all the tech goes down in the court. I don't know, it keeps happening a little bit here. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm so energetic, but I'm only joking. But yeah, so the tech goes down in the court while I'm on the stand giving evidence. And so the next thing, the guy comes in, and I mentioned I was away, I was on the boat and things like that. The guy comes in and I recognise from somewhere, and he's like, oh, how you doing? I'm like, oh yeah, how you doing? And I was like, I recognise him from somewhere, and he's like, oh, we met on the boat. He was sat next to me on the boat. Like, just by coincidence, seeing that, I do the Wim Hof method, and he was like, oh yeah, I've wanted to try that for a while, and we had a good conversation for the whole, like, boat journey. I told him, I'm just doing a bit of legal stuff, and he's like, oh, okay. So he's the tech guy, and it's just, like, fixed.
The Isle of Man.
Yeah, the Isle of Man again, so it's like, wow, this is a coincidence. So he's trying to fix the tech and all that, trying to get up and running. And in the meantime, I've got, like, 8 witnesses. You know, this is now getting to like 12 o'clock. I told the witnesses to be like, start at 10. I'd be off the stand by 10:30, 11. You'd be, that's when we start with the witnesses. Now this is getting to like 12 o'clock and I'm still on the stand and trying to fix all the tech. And I was like, I've got witnesses outside, I've got kids with them and stuff like that. Can we not just begin with this? You know, do you need the video footage? You know, you can use mine. I've got 23 separate videos of all the video footage that I've compiled on a list for you if you want to use them, named the whole lot. And the prosecution was like, you know what, yeah, let's just begin. And then the tech guy was like, just try that now, and you know, the same old, turn it off, turn it back on. Didn't work, but my side of the court was working, his wasn't for the remainder of the court. I thought, well, that's a bit weird, but here we go. So we went through that, and we had all the witnesses then come on the stand, and some of the heartbreaking stories that the witnesses were telling. It's easy for your stories to sound the same when you're telling the truth. You know, when you're lying, your stories don't sound the same, and there's bits missing here, there, and everywhere. So some of the girls, like the ladies that came on the stand, like people were down there. One girl was down there because it was the anniversary of a brother passing away who actually drowned, and it was his anniversary. That's why she was down there, and she had a really profound moment in the water, connecting again with that, and she was really scared of the water. There was somebody else who was like I mentioned off thingy before. It was like one was a nurse from the COVID ward, and she come down because she was dealing with stress and all the rest of it. So it was like, I asked her on the stand and said, you know, at any point did you feel anyone was put at risk? You'd obviously know risk management of COVID and everything else. And she went, no, absolutely not. You know, and she was obviously tested before she went down there, tested herself, so she made sure she didn't have anything or wasn't feeling sick. And and that's the type of people we had down, like other people who were dealing with depression and anxiety and all kinds of really, like, some of the stories were heartbreaking. You know, these people on the stand, and obviously the prosecution's job to try and grill them and whatnot, and which I didn't like, because, you know, I was just gratefully there to, you know, to tell the truth and stand up for me and what the truth was.
So these weren't people you knew, in the sense of a gathering. It wasn't you and a load of mates. This is people you had no idea about.
I mean, there was some people I did know. There was some people I did know. Like you said, it's the Isle of Man. Everyone knows everyone. There was some people that I did really know more than others. I'd hold my hand up to that. You know, people I'd gone cold water.
I think you said at the outset when you were looking for witness statements, I suppose, that people weren't. You just some people there.
Yeah, I mean, there's some people I've never met in my life who'd come down from like Ramsey or these distant places to come down at that time in the morning, and they said, you know, we were really suffering with our mental health, and we came down, and you know, and they just mimicked my actions. It was like he wasn't guiding us, wasn't telling us what to do. He said we came down, we knew he'd be there. We were suffering with our mental health because of the lockdowns and everything else, and other things that they had going on in the family, and in their lives, that, you know. And he said, yeah, the water had actually helped them. I mean, I think it was either on the third day or the second day, because I had 2 lots of witnesses. I had 8 on the first day when I got off the stand, so I had 8 then, and then another 7. I think it was 7 and 7, 1 including me. So that I had to cross-examine. So did the prosecution. I think it might have been on the second day. One of the girls had a skin condition that she'd actually ended up healing a skin condition, and had a doctor's note to say that the cold water therapy had healed her from a skin condition. And she had the doctor's note, and it said like there, and I just happened to say, I was like, do you happen to have that doctor's note with you by any chance? She's like, yeah, I brought it with me. Took it out of the bag, and it's like, and I was like, oh, excellent. And it just was like, well, do you not want to read it first? I went, yeah, I'll have a read of it. So stood there, read it. And she, can you pass it to the prosecutor? Passed it to him. Judge took it, and then she's like, can I have a copy of that and put that on the record? So it's like literally people were down there healing themselves, getting well. So that was the second day, and I thought the second day went really well. And then the third day came out, and because I was flowing with the questions, because obviously I ask questions first when it's my witness. So on the first day with the police, prosecution asked questions, then I asked questions, then he's allowed to ask questions again to go over some bits. So on that second day, I was allowed to ask the questions first. He asked questions, and if I had anything to elaborate on and to go in more detail, I could ask questions at the end. But most of mine, because people were telling the truth, was just like, no more questions, Your Honour. Let's get them out of it. They're done. They've they've said what they need to say, and and it was very truthful. It was quite easy. There's only a couple of times I had to kind of ask more questions at the end just to get a few more points out. But then on the last day, so on the first day, someone had pointed out to me that the prosecution was asking leading questions to his own witnesses. You're not allowed to do that. So when I came back after the adjournment after dinner on the first day, I was like, why is it the council's being allowed to ask leading questions to his own witnesses? They're like, oh, what questions he asked? I've not seen that. I was like, well, this question, that question, this. And I said, well, okay, because obviously I'm getting the transcripts and I'll be able to see it. So anyway, so after the second day, it just went the way it went. And obviously the judge steps in at some certain bits. But then on the third day, I started to ask similar questions to the day before. And the judge was like, right, you're not allowed to ask leading questions. So I'm like, first person on the stand, I'm like, what? So I'm now trying to think as I'm going through the questions. I was like, I didn't think that was leading. I was allowed to ask that question yesterday. And then it kind of clocked on me. I was like, oh, maybe it's been evened out a bit because the prosecution asked a few leading questions. And maybe it's just that's even out. Like third day, like just let's keep it simple. So I had to think on the spot and reword all the questions that I was up to like 2:00 in the morning each night, writing different questions for different people because I had to understand what point of view they were coming from. So I was learning and adapting as I was going in court. So then we got through that day, and I thought it didn't go as well as the second day because I thought the second day we completely blew the case out of the water, in my opinion. On the third day, it went well enough, and then we had the summation at the end. So I went into the fact that I wasn't provided by the prosecution all the evidence that was meant to be provided that undermined the case. He did his summation first, and it was literally so horrendous to me. And I'm sat there and I'm listening to it, and he's saying all this stuff, and I purposely went down the beach, and I proverbially stuck the two fingers up to the police force and the public and all this other stuff, which was nonsense. It was just and I was just like, that's not true. And I was sat there, and it was the only point really I got quite a little bit angry. And I'm quite good at, trying to stay calm. So I'm sat there and I'm like, and Steve's like, just stay calm. And I couldn't believe it's like 3 or 4 pages of this stuff he just came out with. And I think the judge noticed that, and she went, Ian, would you like to take 10 minutes before you do yours? And I said, yeah, Your Honour. I said, I need the toilet. So I went outside, I composed myself, and I had a load of like notes that I wrote down, a few that Steve had been writing down while I was there. And I just came in and said, Your Honour, I wrote a lot of notes down, but I'm just going to say this from the heart. She went, do you know you have to go into the evidence and this and that and cite it properly? I said, I know. I said, I've lived it, I've breathed it. I've got first-hand knowledge of everything that happened on that day, so I'm just going to say how it is. And I just reeled it all off. Just can't remember how long it was, but it was, it was quite emotional at the end of it. I was really, and it was a tough time. And someone who was there in the court, so I had said it, and the judge was like, right, there's a lot to go over. Can we give you a verdict tomorrow? I said, yeah, not an issue. And as I've turned around, like there's a guy there who's been helping me out, and I'm just like, and I think apparently walked in halfway through my summation, and I'd just been like, and I seen him, he was next to me, and I just gave him a hug. I just didn't know what to do. He tried to speak to me, and I couldn't even talk. I was just like, please, people are trying to talk to me when we got out of the court. Just don't talk to me a minute. I was just going to burst into tears. And with people who were in the gallery, they're watching me, like, that was so evident of, like, and this is their opinion, it's like, it was proper darkness versus light to a degree. It was just like, I'm just talking it straight from the heart, saying exactly what happened, and saying I didn't want to break the law. It was never my intention. I don't want a criminal record. I want to travel for my business. I need to go away to do my training, back to the Netherlands, and do the Wim Hof and stuff everywhere around the world. It's like, I don't want any of this. I didn't want this to happen. I don't want to be in this court now. So when it ended on that, and then the next day we came in, and the judge was giving the judgment.
How was the night before?
The night was okay because it was like, for me, it was done. No matter, I was settled with, no matter what happens is the way it's meant to be. If I'm going to jail tomorrow for what I've done, then I'll go to jail. And, I had a plan in February, and I don't tell a lot of people this, and to help some of the vulnerable up at the prison. So I actually went up to the prison, and I sit down with the governor and everyone else. I was like, right, okay, because I know that from friends of mine who've been in there, that, kind of just giving tablets and sit in your cell and that's it. Just be medicated and what the rest. And some people come out of prison with pharmaceutical problems, And I've seen that. So for me, I want to go up there and do a workshop for them and even the prison warden and stuff like that, and like a team building. And, I was going to go up there and do that for them in February, but it got cancelled because of lockdown, and then I got arrested. And so for me, it's my fate when I was like, well, you know what? If this is the way it's meant to be, universe, and I'm meant to be going up there. Even when I got arrested, I was in the holding cell that night. So this is where I'm meant to be going up to Germany, and I'm meant to be helping these people, and so be it. And that was always my mentality toward it all. So yeah, it was.
So what was verdict day like?
So the verdict day, it was nerve wracking because there's some people that came down, and I didn't agree with this because I respect the courts now, and like I said, I respect the laws and the men that died fighting, so we could have these laws to protect us. There's other countries in the world like now, like Canada and Australia and New Zealand, that haven't got the same type of laws as us, and they've had a lot worse under the lockdowns and things like that than we have. So I'm grateful that we got these laws and these men that fought and died for us to protect it. So I'm now respecting the courts, and I know that our laws, they're not, the court's laws or the system's laws, that our laws, the people, that our laws, they're there to protect us. So I'm respecting that now. So I go in on the last day, and the judge asked everyone to rise, and there's some people who won't rise for the judge, and like me and Steve stood there and like, this is my job, rise, stop disrespecting the court. That's not what I wanted. And so we got off to a bad start. Straight away I'm like this, and I've got my head on the table. I just had my head down then because I thought, and because the judge came in, she was like, "You're not doing Ian any favours by doing what you're doing." And I was just like, "Oh, this could have swayed it now, because I didn't know what was going to happen." So I got my head down. I got my head like that through the whole thing while she's reading the verdict, and I'm just nodding at bits I agree with. And she went into the definition of a gathering, which is like a meeting where people have a conversation and talk to each other and this, that. And I'm thinking, well,
as she's going through that, do you have these kind of highs and lows of going, oh, this is going in my direction, this isn't?
Yeah, it's like, that whole, like, you see in the films and stuff, and you're like, oh, like the whole thing. But in my heart, so I'm sat there, and I've got all the stuff that, like, kind of mess with the laws that I'm getting ready for if she does. Like I said, you've always be prepared for every step. So I've got everything to say that, well, actually, they've broken the law by not providing me this, and this. And I was ready for that, but I had my head down anyway. And as she's pulling me through it, and she said, it doesn't meet the definition of a gathering, in my opinion, under the dictionary version of what a gathering or an assembly should be. Now, I put motions dismissed on the grounds that freedom of assembly and association is a fundamental human right under Article 6 of the Freedom in the 2001 Human Rights Act, as well as in conjunction with the European Convention on Human Rights. So that's a fundamental human right, freedom of assembly and association. So I had that in the background to say, well, even if this is classed as a gathering or assembly, that's a fundamental human right to be able to protest against tyrannical governments, which is why the chief constable at the time, I won't mention his name, but he mentioned in the Black Lives Matter protest that protesting is a fundamental human right, and the police supported it. So like, you're supporting 1,000 people on the prom during a lockdown, but 11 people going into the sea for a 5-minute dip in the sea at distance, which has been admitted, where hardly anyone's even had a conversation with each other, is now classed as a gathering, where distance is irrelevant, and then all the other rules that just seem to be changed. So when she started saying that, I was like, okay. And then she started going on about the warning. She's like, I'm not convinced there was a warning given. All right, okay, excellent. Because I wouldn't have been adamant and been asking for this notebook entry if it would have been there in the first place, because there's no way that all this would have happened. So for me, it was like, when she started reading it out, and then like Steve's nudging me and everyone else. And the next thing, like, she said, right now I'm going to be acquitting you. And I was just like, big, massive weight off my shoulder. Everyone in the gallery started cheering. Judge is like, there's no need for that, and everything else. But then she said, right, Ian, you're allowed to go for your, apply for costs and damages, things like that. It's like, okay. And then I said, how long have I got and whatnot? And she said a certain amount of time. The prosecution was going on holiday. There's one thing I need after this last 18 months it's turned into. But yeah, so she said that, I said, well, I think I should deserve to be paid for the time now, because I have to put my whole business on hold. I got my business bank account card on the day I got arrested. But for me, it's now been the difficult part for the last couple of weeks is trying to prove my cost and my losses, because it's...
Do you ever get an apology?
I never got an apology. But the BBC reported it. I'd have been happy, for the Isle of Man. And some people have said that I should take the media for defamation. for what they did to me and things like that. And it's whether I want to go down that road or not. And now I'm learning my paralegal stuff. There's people who are part of the court process who actually told me, said, listen, you did really well. You know, have you ever thought about taking up law? Like, not to blow smoke up my ass, but like, you know, you've done really well. And people who I spoke to in the background, like I've had other lawyers and things like that reach out to me and say, you know, if you ever fancy doing it, you know, there's a place as an apprentice type of thing. So I've now got more options, and once again, I don't ever want to play the victim and allow myself to slip into victim consciousness. Why me? Or, you know, like you said before, was that question of why me and out of everyone else. I knew this is, okay, if this is the path that I'm being put in, what do I need to learn? What do I need to grow? And, you know, I knew if I just put the hard work in, focus, made sacrifices, you know, at the same time in July when Big Steve's wife had passed away, Jean, you know, my girlfriend had kind of left me because it was neglecting her, and we were kind of, you know, getting back since I got arrested after we split up before that. And so that was a lot to deal with. I had so much going on. Like I said, the 6 people who passed away during that time, whose funerals I had to go to, the 2 funerals on the Friday on the same day before I was in court on Monday. So it was all so much, and it was just like finally getting that verdict, and yeah, it was just...
What's the biggest emotion you take away from it? You're proud of yourself?
Proud, I'd say I am kind of now. I'd say more empowered. It taught me to learn, and now I respect the law, and, you know, and I respect, you know, I think kids should be getting taught this in school. I think kids should be getting taught, you know, I imagine a generation of children that know their rights and know their laws and know how to, you know, handle themselves in these environments so they don't happen to them. And, you know, for me, when I've been put on this path, I want to live my life ever since, you know, back in, you know, before I went into the Wim Hof road, was I wanted to live my life to empower other people with the health, right? So now if this is presented, this path is put in front of me that I now have to study law and this is what I have to do, then this is what I have to do. I'm not going to whinge about it, complain about it, and this, that, and the other. I'm going to put in the hours. I'm going to sacrifice everything. I lost a lot on the journey, and I felt like I couldn't mourn for some of the people that I'd lost, because it was like, I'm walking in the door, like piles of legislation like this, and I'm trying to prepare for a funeral that's going on, and I didn't have a suit, and someone gave me a suit, and, you know, all this stuff. And it's like, so for me, it's like, if now this is my path, and, you know, I felt like I could finally settle, mourn, do all that stuff, and then plan for the future. If this is the path, that should I go into law so that I can empower others? Should I do, like, people ask me to do presentations now and what I did and how I conducted it. And I've got all, like I said, I've got all the video evidence, I've got all the video footage, I've got all the transcripts, audio transcripts of the court. People are saying, oh, you could make a screenplay out of this and whatnot, and I've got the name of my book now, so to be the man in the orange shorts. But yeah, so for me, I don't know. There's plenty of options out there. I was kind of hoping that the court would give me a good verdict on the costs, which is, like I said, I'd struggle to justify my loss of earnings, because, like I said, I got arrested on the day I got my business bank account. We had 2 lockdowns before that, and not really been my ability to earn a living, so I couldn't really prove. But I can show you the hours and the amount of documents and work that I'd done, and it's, you know, you don't... I think there's an old Stoic saying that says, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. You know, and I prepared. It wasn't lucky that I won. I was like, one, I had the truth on my side, which is a massive bonus. But, like, at the end of the day, the amount of work that I put in and the sacrifice, like some mornings, because your head's that busy because I'm reading through legislation, typing on documents. If I left some days, I was leaving like a document half done, and it's like I'm going into bed and my mind's racing. I'm trying to do my breathing to calm myself down, but it's like 5 o'clock in the morning. I've got to be up at 6. I'm like, might as well just go up now. And I was operating on 0 sleep, and that was happening for the majority of the year. You know, I can't prove all the hours that I put in, but
it's an amazing story, really, to just to do that amount of work. To broke a lot of people, I'd have thought, people trying to do that. So, fair play.
It's, you know, it put me through some dark places, and that's why, you know,
but learning for the future.
Yeah, exactly. So now I feel empowered by it because, I said this to the judge. I said, this will never happen to me again. I can promise you that now. This will never happen to me again because I know the law now and I feel like the law. So, if, I end up with a bad apple again because, like I said, I don't want to cause any controversy on the police or anyone like that or anyone in our government. Like I said, the people in the court are amazing. And actually at the end, so the judge said to me at the end, when she was reading the verdict, she went, "Yesterday, and you apologised," because when I was doing my summary at the end, I said, "Your Honour," I said, "I'm sorry today for asking leading questions." I said, "I didn't realise, I was asking some questions from the day before that were similar." And she went, and when she was doing my verdict the next day, she said, "Ian," she said, "you apologised yesterday for asking leading questions." She goes, "I just want to tell you that, I thought your cross-examination was really good, well done." And she actually congratulated me. So it's like, okay, kind of, maybe won the hearts over them. And, I've got people from the courts now who are in reception, asking to do cold water therapy and all that. Some of the clerks want, and speaking to them. And so it just turned, it's a bit of a fairy tale ending because it's like, they seen that there was no malice in my heart. It was never intentional like that. I wanted to just break the rules. And, and I just, in a world where we're having our opinions and things taken away and things like that, it's like, it's just...
Do you feel the coverage of the verdict was appropriate to the coverage of the outset?
There's some things I didn't agree with. Like, I know and I understand that she has to kind of protect kind of the police and the prosecution, but, in my eyes, like, some of the things that they'd done extended the whole proceedings. If I'd have had that evidence from day one, like I said, right, here's the law, look, here's the direction notice, here's the notebook entry, and here's the video footage.
More about the media coverage post. Or do you not care?
I'd say I don't care. I know people can have their opinion about me, whatever. If some people still want to listen to this and think that I still should have gone to jail and I'm guilty of whatever, then they can have that opinion. They're completely entitled to that opinion. And this is what I said in like one of my Facebook posts. It's like, what type of world would we live in if you weren't allowed your own opinion about something? Because it'd just be like, this is the way it is and that's it. That's called tyranny and that's called oppression and that's called communism or whatever. It's like, if people want to have an opinion about me, they can do. That's completely fine. But opinion based on a falsehood in the media is not really an opinion, and it doesn't really bother me. But like I said, it bothered my family in some instances and stuff like that, and some of my friends.
So what is the future now? What's the future for you now?
I don't know. Honestly, I've got
a load of options anyway.
I've got some options, yeah. I want to, same thing, I want to empower people. I still want to carry on with my law studies. I've got to go on still with filing. I've got to do an appeal letter on costs because they offered me costs that basically what a good advocate can earn in an hour. They've offered me for the whole year's worth of work for costs because I can't really get to that really prove, and I can prove certain things. So I make mistakes. I used the wrong rules and for the wrong court, for the higher court rather than the lower court. So I've got to look through them, and I found a few things in that. So I've got to write an appeal letter for that and a few other things. But don't know. I want to go back into doing my Wim Hof method, and I want to start doing a daily breathing session. So for beginners, so it's no ice bath and stuff like that. I want to start doing the breathing, get people to do the breathing. I think it was very coincidental as well. I don't believe in coincidences. I think everything happens for a reason. That like Wim is on TV right after a Wim trial, and it's like, right, and more people now seeing him and who he is, and know how beneficial the method is with like these celebrities and stuff like that. And I think it's amazing, So I want to get a weekly breathing session for beginners where we can just explain the breathing. We don't have to do the ice bath because that's what kind of freaks a few people out at first and puts them off. So get them doing the breathing, get them to help themselves with that. I then want to do an intermediate breathing session for people like yourself who've done it before, come to the fundamentals workshop and so they can just come and do an hour rather than like an hour and a half, so I don't have to explain it. Do that and maybe work on that once a week. I want to start helping some of the corporates deal with some, maybe do some dinner time breathing sessions and stuff like that for them. I actually did something, I don't know if I should say this, but I've got a big mouth and whatnot, and I'm honest. So I actually have been speaking with some people from the mental health departments on the island, so I really want to start getting in and helping the vulnerable. A bit like I wanted to do up the prison, so I'd still be open to doing that and helping. I don't want to be doing rapists and murderers and stuff like that. But like young people who are in there for say a cannabis charge, just all these people are just being who lost and need this help and might get the benefit from this. Plus, it might help the prison wardens, the NHS staff, the police officers, the fire brigades. I want to start doing some stuff for them and helping them, and that's where I kind of want to go. And then, so that with the Wim Hof stuff and getting in with the mental health departments and the ILS and charities and stuff like that, and maybe getting some funding from them so that we can have places for people who can't afford to come to a workshop to come to it and experience it, and to take home these beneficial therapies. Also, I want to start doing retreats. So I want to start doing some weekend retreats and then work on week-long retreats. I want to aim to do that over the winter time. Get some nice places. Some of the people that have been doing some stuff in the UK, hopefully they might want to come over, and we'll get some other good events and things up and running. And then I want to work on product ranges for my own company and bringing in some natural therapies and herbs and things like that. Not the illegal ones, by the way, but that's a different conversation. But like alternate therapies and things like that I've studied over the years, and I know that I'm using and helping me, and I've just started getting fit again, so I've started training again, which is nice, because I'm so weak after the year of nothing. Yeah, and I want to get back out on the beach every morning again for sunrise and start getting that momentum going, and there's some people from around the world who's from other instructors and things like that, who mentioned we should have kind of a man in the orange shorts day, like beach swim or cold water swim, or for freedom or for transparency and truth and justice. And
you still got those shorts, have you?
Still got them shorts, yeah. It's actually
get them signed by the judge or something.
Well, that's a good idea. That could happen.
Well, want to sign is another story, but
but actually, I'd love to do a workshop for the judiciary as well, because I don't want to hate on anyone. I don't want. That's one thing that this whole COVID thing brought up, is all this division and this hatred, and like we talked about before, the anti-vaxxers, the sheeple, this, that, and the other carrot, and it's just all noise. It's like let's just
So I did want to appreciate it being a long podcast. I did want to get into a number of other bits around censorship we talked about before we came on air, labels, etc. But perhaps we'll save that for next time we catch up.
Yeah, definitely.
Because appreciate you sharing your views on that as well, because that's really interesting. So thanks for coming in, sharing your story, really interesting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
On your court case and winning it. And good luck with the Wim Hof, etc. Again, people can reach out to you on Facebook. You've got a Facebook page.
So it's actually Ian Ianson on Facebook, and I think I went over the reasons for that on this time. But I did see kind of got arrested. People were saying he's not even on Facebook. It's his own name. I actually put Kirk in brackets so people knew. And they'll just quickly elaborate on that story before we finish. It's like I was off Facebook. I'm not a fan of social media because it portrays a false reality, which has never been more evident in this case from what you see on Facebook posts and pictures. It's just not a true picture of reality. But so I'm not a fan of social media, but when I was traveling, people wanted to go on to see what I was up to, so I could post pictures, and it was just easier for them to contact me. So I was looking into a lot of Nordic and Scandinavian ways of how they call siblings. So in the male side of things, it would be Christian, Eric's son, so his father would be Eric, so he's Eric's son. So my dad's called Ian, so when I was going away, I was like, oh, that'd be interesting, wouldn't it? Ian Ianson, son of Ian. So that's why my name is that on Facebook. So some people call it Lanson, Ian Lanson. I'm like, right. But yeah, so that's me on Facebook. Inner Alchemy as well as my company that I'm setting up, and that I can now continue to move forward and progress and.
And just on the chat, I've got Sharif asking if you're going to bring Wim Hof out to Qatar World Cup 2022.
Absolutely, yeah, we've already talked about this, Sharif, and I'd love to come out to Qatar and other places around the world and share Wim's message. Really, it's his message. I feel blessed to be in the position to do. But anywhere we can do a Wim Hof in the desert. I'm sure
that might be nice out there. So.
Yeah, it would actually. I think I'd rather stay in that. But yeah, so.
Oh, great. Well, thanks again for joining us. Much appreciated.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for letting me talk openly again.
No, that's what from Matt and I, but podcast has always been about people coming on, sharing their views. People have different opinions. We go back to that division. It's not about creating division. It's just creating an opportunity for people to chat about. Yeah. If they want to chat about their mental health, they want to chat about their journey, whether it's over a year or 20 years, it's appreciated, and your time is, and hopefully the listeners took something from it. I certainly did. So appreciate your time. Thank you.
I'm grateful. Thank you. Much appreciated.
Cheers. That's it. Yeah, it's word out from Martin.
And word out from Matt.
Screw you guys, I'm good.